Chapter 3041. Master, they died 7 days ago. Moon God Sword reported. Ji Shinyu nodded. That was when Huang and Xie returned to the Purple Cloud sect. Moon God Sword flew to the center of the hill and turned around. After Huang Qinglu brought the stranger here, he put him here. Ji Shinyu patted the sword's hilt to encourage it. It was so considerate to have this sword by her side. It helped her a lot and saved her a lot of trouble. She looked around, and her heart skipped a beat. Those skeletons seemed to be standing in a disorderly manner, but upon closer inspection, they seemed to be standing in some kind of formation. She carefully compared them, and her heart sank. These skeletons were standing in 6 different directions, faintly forming the shape of a hexagram. And looking at their movements, they seemed to be attacking the center of the hexagram before stopping. Their flesh and blood were sucked dry, leaving only skin and bones. Ji Shinyu suddenly felt a great sense of panic. She seemed to have understood something, but she couldn't believe it. Her fingers trembled slightly. She quickly checked the skeletons and recognized their species. These species were all different. There was a dual-winged salamander, a single-winged black lion, a flood dragon, and even a bird that looked like a vermilion bird. It was obvious that the bird was of the fire attribute, and the flood dragon was of the water attribute. As for the dual-winged salamander, it was a gift from Ji Shinyu to his master. He had fought with it before and knew that it was of the earth attribute. The single-winged black lion was of the metal attribute. These animals were of different attributes and stood in different positions. They were all standing in positions that were beneficial to their attributes. For example, the bird stood in the south. It was of the fire attribute. Ji Shinyu suppressed the panic in her heart and checked the overall shape of the hill. Her body trembled slightly. This hill was very similar to the Purple Cloud sect's martial arts field. The only difference was that the hill was filled with colorful stones, while the Purple Cloud sect was paved with colorful jade stones. Of course, if one didn't look carefully, they wouldn't find any similarities between the two. After all, one was as exquisite as the Jade Lake, while the other was just an irregular hill. Ji Shinyu's eyes flashed with a martial arts field formation. It was also a hexagram, and the disciples of different attributes stood in different positions. That array was exactly the same as the one formed by the ferocious beasts on the hillside. These ferocious beasts were already psychic. Some of their intelligence was even higher than a human's, and some of them could even transform. They could summon the wind, rain, and lightning. However, their intelligence was different after all. The probability of them automatically forming a formation to attack people was almost zero. Furthermore, even someone as knowledgeable as Ji Shinyu had never seen the ancient array before, so it was even more impossible for these beasts to have seen it. There was only one possibility for such a situation. These ferocious beasts were controlled by someone and formed into this array. Then, their flesh and blood were sucked dry. What about his senior martial brothers and junior martial nephews? If they used the same array to attack the blood-sucking monster, would they be sucked dry as well? Ji Shinyu felt as if her entire body had fallen into an ice cave. She felt a chill from head to toe. If that was the case, what kind of role did her master Ziyan play? She didn't even dare to think about it. Her master. He was most likely a member of the demon sect and Xie Zhuk's subordinate. That formation was not a demon subduing formation. It was very likely that it was a formation that helped Demon Master Xie Zhuk become a true demon. They were just throwing their lives away. What should she do? Chapter 3042. Xie Zhuk did not follow them all the way to Rongyu Ishinlin's carefree island. This was because the 2 people who had been flying in front of him stopped midway and went directly to a restaurant in the city below to eat and drink. This made Xie Zhuk very irritable. He wished he could kick the 2 of them up and continue on his way. The sky was already dark, but the 2 of them still had no intention of getting up, especially that Yunshi. When Xie Zhuk usually saw her eating, he felt that she was elegant and quiet, a role model. But now, when he saw her eating, he felt that she was deliberately showing off and was not heroic at all. Most importantly, he felt that she ate too slowly. In his anxiety, Xie Zhuk wanted to set the restaurant on fire and use extreme methods to bombard the two of them. However, before he could release the fire, Huang Qinglu, who had been following him, suddenly walked over and told him a piece of good news. Ji Shunyue had returned to the Purple Cloud sect. This news excited Xie Juk more than any other news. He still didn't believe it. He opened the sound transmission talisman and contacted the other side. Finally, he confirmed the authenticity of the news. Ji Shunyue had indeed returned. He naturally no longer had the heart to follow Rongyi Shenlin. With a sneer, he immediately rode a cloud away. He originally wanted to use the instant speed technique, but Huang Luqing told him that he still had a tough battle to fight tomorrow. He could not waste his mind power for no reason, so he needed to use an ordinary flight technique to fly back. However, Xie Juk was eager to return. In the end, Huang Luqing thought of a compromise. The mermaid race also had a kind of teleportation technique. Although it could not compare to the immortal race's instant speed technique, it was still much faster than ordinary flight techniques. It could take him 4 hours to reach his destination. Xie Juk agreed. When he and Huang Luqing arrived at the Purple Cloud sect, it was already the middle of the night. With their martial arts and familiarity with the terrain, it was very easy for them to sneak into the Purple Cloud sect silently. As soon as he returned, he did not bother to exchange pleasantries with the people here and went straight to Ji Shunyue's courtyard. He had to see her with his own eyes before he could truly feel at ease. At the door, Sect Master Zi Yin stopped him. This was the second time the master and disciple had met after Xie Juk returned to his true form. Sect Master Zi Yin looked at him with a slightly complicated gaze. Then, he lowered his eyes and said his only condition, "Young master, Shinyu does not know anything. I have already made her unconscious. She will only wake up in 2 days. By then, everything will have been settled. I just need to tidy things up properly. She will not discover anything. Young master, you cannot harm her." Xie Juk glanced at him and said indifferently, "I have my reasons. Don't worry." He turned around and entered the house. Sect Master Zi Yun's eyes dimmed. The Devil Lord had awakened, but his mischievous little disciple had disappeared. Was this what he wanted? He was still worried. Just as he was about to follow in to take a look, he saw Xie Juk rush out with a livid expression. "She's not in the house at all." Sect Master Zi Yun's expression changed drastically. "Impossible. I saw her outside the window just now." As he spoke, he also rushed into the house. Ji Shunyue's boudoir was warm, just like when he carried her in, but she was nowhere to be seen. Instead, there was a new doll on her bed, quietly lying on her bed. Xie Juk followed him in. A spell was used on this doll. If you don't look carefully, you'll think that she's lying in the blanket. I just lifted the bed curtain and found that something was wrong. Had she been kidnapped? Or did she escape? Logically speaking, the drug he used on her should not have failed. There was almost no possibility of her escaping. Chapter 3043. Huang Luqing silently walked around the room and came to a conclusion. She left on her own. No one took her away. No one doubted Huang Luqing's deduction because he was Sharkman and could follow a person's aura to find them. He was also the military advisor of the devil race. What he deduced was not false. She left on her own? Then there was only one possibility. She had found some clues and went out to investigate. Huang Luqing took a deep breath and said, "Young master, I'm afraid the situation has changed. If Ji Shunyue tells anyone about young master, I'm afraid the array won't be able to be opened smoothly tomorrow. The only thing we can do now is to open the array in advance and let young master recover in case of any accidents." Sect Master Zi Yun frowned slightly. It was not easy to open this array. Even if all the people were in place, it would take 4 hours to open it. It was not something that could be opened immediately. When he mentioned the difficulty, Huang Luqing also frowned. Others are easy to deal with, but that Rongyue Tianlan is not easy to deal with. If Ji Shunyue tells him what she heard here, I'm afraid he will come immediately. If he comes to mess things up, our plan will fail. Xie Juk clenched his fingers slightly. He did not doubt this. That Rongyue Tianlan was not an ordinary person. Sect Master Ziyan said, "Don't worry about this. I have the voice transmission talisman that Shun Yu used to contact him. Before you arrived, Rong Yue Tianlan had already tried to contact her. I pretended to be her and answered it, calming him down. Rong Yue Tianlan will not suspect anything. He will not come for a while. He paused again. From his tone, he will come here to look for her the day after tomorrow, so he will not ruin our plan. Huang Luqing heaved a sigh of relief and urged Xie Zhuk, young master, why don't we ask Ziyin to call everyone to set up the array now? Xie Zhuk's face was as cold as iron. No need. Find her first. Young master, I have made up my mind. There is no need to say anything more. Besides, isn't this array the most effective when it is opened at noon? Then we should still act according to the original plan. Tomorrow morning, we will gather and set up the array at noon. Huang Luqing, follow her aura and search. It was late at night, and third senior marshal brother was sitting on the big green rock, watching over the demon revealing mirror not far away. Suddenly, a figure flashed, and eldest senior marshal brother Feng Wuji walked over. He spoke straightforwardly. Third brother, you still have to fight tomorrow, so I'll keep watch of the rest of the night. You should quickly go back and rest. Eldest senior brother is so considerate. Third senior brother and his disciples had a look of gratitude in their eyes. Since they were brothers, there was no need to be too courteous. Therefore, third senior brother and his disciples quickly left. The entrance of the Beast Valley returned to its peaceful state. After the group of people had left, Feng Wuji walked up to the demon revealing mirror and slowly took it off and kept it in his storage space. At the same time, Xie Zhuk and Huang Luqing appeared at the entrance of the valley. She entered the valley. Huang Liuqing's tone was incomparably certain. Xie Zhuk paused for a moment and did not say anything. With a flash, he entered the valley, within the Beast Valley. Ji Shan Yue stood in the middle of the array. Yu Shun Jian saw that her face was extremely pale and that she was standing there like a wooden person in a daze. He was a little puzzled. He touched her fingers and found that her fingers were as cold as ice. He was shocked. What's wrong with you? Ji Shan trembled as if she had been struck by lightning and jumped up. No. Chapter 3044. Ji Shan trembled as if she had been struck by lightning and jumped up. No. Yu Shin sword. Ji Shan ignored Yu Shun sword's confusion and took out his sound transmission talisman with trembling hands. This sound transmission talisman was connected to her third senior brother. She subconsciously wanted to open it, but her fingers paused. What role did these senior marshal brothers of hers play in this earth-shattering conspiracy? What if they all knew and only hid it from her? No. Third senior brother will also go to battle tomorrow. This matter concerns his life and death. He can't be involved. He should be a pawn that will be sacrificed. She steeled herself and opened the sound transmission talisman. The other side quickly picked up. Little junior sister? Why aren't you asleep yet? His tone was naturally filled with joy and concern. Ji Shin, you didn't know why, but her heart ached. Little junior sister, why are you looking for me at this time? Her short silence made third senior brother a little worried. Ji Shun, you didn't know where to start, so she first asked. Third senior brother, where are you? I just returned to my room and was about to rest. Little junior sister, do you need something? If there's something, I'll come to your courtyard to find you. Ah, I heard you were on duty at the entrance of the valley. Did you change shifts? Ji Shin originally wanted to say it through the sound transmission talisman, but she felt that it wasn't convenient to say such a big thing through the sound transmission talisman. She might as well call third senior brother to another place to have a good chat. Yes, there's a big battle tomorrow. Eldest senior brother was afraid that I would be too tired and not be able to rest well, so he replaced me just now. Now that he's guarding the entrance of the valley, nothing will go wrong. Ji Shin Yu's heart sank. She felt that there was something wrong with eldest senior brother, but she didn't dare to be sure. Taking another breath, she decided to go straight to the point. Third senior brother, there's something wrong with the array tomorrow. Just as she said this, a light suddenly flashed, and the sound transmission talisman in Ji Shun Yu's palm flew out like lightning and closed. She was shocked and quickly raised her head to see a black-robed person standing not far from her. The black robe was like the night, his hair like a curtain, satin down to his ankles. He wore a hood on his head, hiding his face in the shadow of the hood, making people couldn't see his face, but they felt a chill from the bottom of their hearts. Huang Qinglu was also standing not far behind him. Her eyes seemed to contain an unfathomable smile as she looked at her and slowly said, "What's wrong with that array formation?" Ji Xinyu abruptly took a step back, then another step back, looking at Huang Qinglu, then at the black-robed man, her palms sweating. Her gaze turned to the black-robed man. "Little Jiao?" The black-robed man slowly raised his head. His long hair parted like satin, revealing his slightly pale face and a pair of eyes that were as deep as the night. "Senior sister." His voice was slightly cold and had the magnetism of a cello. Ji Xinyu froze. This face was completely different from Xie Fengliu's. Xie Fengliu was naturally tall and handsome, but he had a likable baby face, which made him more adorable. On the other hand, the black-robed man's facial features were extremely deep and well-defined. He was extraordinarily handsome, especially his eyes. The corners of his eyes were slightly raised, and his eyes were as black as an abyss, as if they wanted to pull people in. At this moment, those eyes were looking at her. His eyelashes that were as dense as fans gently fluttered, giving off a hint of charm and enchantment. "Senior sister, don't you recognize me?" Ji Shenyu's fingers gripped the hilt of the moon god sword, looking at those eyes. "You're not little Jiao." Her little Jiao wasn't so charming and bewitching. His body also didn't have such a cold aura. Chapter 3045. The black-robed man sighed softly and slowly took a step forward. Ji Shenyu subconsciously retreated. She had already felt the powerful demonic aura of this black-robed man. This person's cultivation was extremely profound. With her martial arts, she would probably be defeated within a few dozen moves. Furthermore, there was Huang Qinglu, whose strength was unknown, standing beside him. The probability of her defeating the two of them was 0. It seemed that she could only escape. While Ji Shanyu was dealing with them, she had already begun to carefully plan an escape plan. The black-robed man was tall and had been looking down at her pretty face. He slowly said, "If I'm not little Nine, then who am I?" Ji Shenyu's mind was spinning rapidly as she replied, "I don't care who you are." The moon god sword in her hand seemed to struggle uncontrollably and even swiped a screen in her mind. However, Ji Shenyu's attention was focused on the two people in front of her. She did not notice the moon god sword's small movements at all. After she finished speaking, she suddenly flicked her fingertips and a cloud of smoke suddenly spread out from her body, covering her figure. This smoke talisman was given to her by Rongyue Tonlan, who said that it was best to use it when escaping. At that time, she was somewhat disdainful because she never ran when fighting with others. She always wanted to fight to the end. However, she could not continue fighting now. She had to quickly escape and inform the people in Ziyun's sect. While the smoke dispersed, she wanted to use her martial arts to escape. She took the opportunity to jump back, but unexpectedly, her waist suddenly went numb and her entire body froze. There was someone behind her, and they took advantage of the situation to plot against her. Her body slowly fell and fell into someone's arms. At the moment when she was about to faint, she saw her master's face. When Ji Shinyu woke up again, she found herself in a rather exquisitely decorated room. There were famous landscape paintings hanging on the wall, and the furniture in the room was made of precious agarwood. Below her was a milky white ivory bed, and her body was covered with a cloud silk quilt. Everywhere was a low-key luxury. Ji Shenyu was not unfamiliar with this room. She had been here a few times before. This was Xie Fengliu's room. However, most of the furniture inside had been changed. If it were not for the painting on the wall, Ji Shenyu would not have recognized it. That painting was something she had given to Xie Fengliu back then. Because this brat liked to pretend to be cultured back then, Ji Shenyu happened to find this painting, so she gave it to him to make him look good. However, Ji Shenyu did not have the time to look at the changes in the room. The moment she opened her eyes, her gaze focused on Xie Juk, who was sitting at the table not far away. Her fingers clenched under the blanket. There was a clamshell on the table. Inside the clamshell, a moonlight pearl was shining faintly, illuminating the furnishings in the room. It also made Siejuk's black hair and black clothes shine like satin, but his hands were as fair as jade. He was concocting kung fu tea, and his movements were as smooth as flowing water. He seemed to have noticed that Ji Shanyu had woken up and turned to look at her, his voice gentle. "Shanyu, do you want some tea?" Ji Shanyu slowly sat up on the bed. Her acupuncture points were sealed, so even though she could move, she could only sit up normally. The successive shocks of the truth made her, who had always been calm, pale. She stared at Siejuk and ignored the tea he handed over. She asked straightforwardly, "What do you want?" Siejuk was still holding the tea in front of her. He looked at her with a faint smile. "Senior sister, you don't even want to drink the tea I brewed." Chapter 3046. When he smiled, he looked a little like Xie Fenglu from back then. It was as if he was still little Siegio, the little Siegio who often made her laugh and wanted to shelter her from the wind and rain, even though he didn't have thick wings. Ji Xinyue liked to drink tea, and little Siegio was good at making tea, even better than the tea masters in the palace. In the past, every time they met, Xie Fenglu would always make tea for her. Ji Xinyue liked his filial piety. Once, Ji Xinyue sighed while drinking his tea. "Little Gio, I'm used to drinking this. You'll make my appetite picky. What if I can't drink it in the future? It's best if you become picky. Senior sister, how about you let little Gio make tea for you for the rest of your life?" Xiefenlio's eyes sparkled at that time. He was half joking and half serious. The past cannot be traced back. A month ago, there was no gap between the siblings, but now, she waved her hand and knocked over his tea. "You're not little Siegio." This person did not look or speak like Xie Fenglu. How could her junior brother become him? The teacup fell to the ground with a crisp sound. Siejuk lowered his eyes and looked at the broken teacup. A moment later, he smiled and waved his sleeve. The fragments on the ground disappeared, and even the spilled tea disappeared. He sat down by the bed. Ji Shanyu quietly shrank back, trying to stay as far away from him as possible. Siejuk didn't seem to see her actions. He looked at her with a smile and said indifferently, "I'm indeed not little Siegio. He's just a wisp of my main soul. Now that I've revived, he'll naturally return to me. But don't worry, although our temperaments and appearances are different, our preferences are the same. He likes you, I like you too. No matter what, I won't harm you." His long and narrow eyes narrowed like a fox's. Ji Xinyue's heart sank. She had thought of all kinds of possibilities. For example, he was still Xie Fenglu, but his temperament had changed greatly after he became a demon. For example, Xie Fenglu had been refined by this demon and became its nourishment. But she didn't expect Xie Fenglu to be just a wisp of Xie Juk's soul. No wonder their appearances and temperaments were different. If a soul reincarnated on its own, then this soul had to be extremely powerful. Only then could it directly transform into the main soul during the process of reincarnation and replenish the other souls on its own. Only then could it reincarnate into a complete person. Now that Siejuk had revived and all his souls had returned, little Gio had completely disappeared and would never return. Ji Shanyu felt a sharp pain in her heart. She clenched her fists so tightly that they turned pale. She pursed her lips and stared at him. "The little fox in the crystal cave was you." Siejuk paused for a moment, then smiled. "Shenyu is really smart. That is indeed my true body." Ji Shenyu clenched her fists again and asked all the questions in her heart. "Didn't your soul already scatter? How could he have left his true body behind? Who locked you in there?" Siejuk turned his head to look at her. "It seems like you know a lot. Back then, I fell for the tricks of the immortal realm, and my soul was destroyed by 81 bolts of golden lightning. It was Huang Luqing who used a secret technique and spent hundreds of years to gather a small portion of my soul and condense my true body again. But in the end, my soul was shattered and incomplete. So at that time, I was no different from an ordinary fox and could easily die. And the crystal cave in this beast valley is a place where natural spiritual energy condenses. It's the most suitable place for me to recuperate, so Huang Luqing locked my chaotic true body there." Chapter 3047. So that's how it is. That meteorite chain is an immortal treasure. Isn't Huang Luqing a demon? How could he have such a treasure? Shenyue, Sharkman, is not divided into immortals and demons. He can become an immortal or a demon with a single thought, and the meteorite chain is not divided into good and evil. It is a divine item, but it is not an immortal artifact. Ji Shenyue was speechless. So her master had lied to her back then. She gritted her teeth. Then what about my master? He is your... Xiajuk leaned against the bedpost and sighed softly. He is the left protector of the demon sect, but he clearly cultivates the immortal Tao. I know that demons have spells to hide their auras and can blend into the human world without being discovered. However, that can only fool people with lower cultivation in the immortal world. Those who have cultivated to the level of a divine lord or above can see through it. And the people he has befriended all these years are experts from the immortal world. How could he not reveal any flaws? This was also what Ji Shenyue could not figure out the most after knowing her master's identity. Her master was clearly not a demon. He also taught his disciples immortal techniques. Why? Why was he a demon? And the highest protector of the demon sect. If she had not seen it with her own eyes, Ji Shenyue would not have believed it, even if she was beaten to death. After discovering that her master was a demon subordinate, heavenly lightning was not enough to describe Ji Shenyue's state at that time. No matter how calm and collected she was still a little stunned when she encountered such an earth-shattering matter. If she had not been so distraught at that time, she would not have been so easily schemed against and brought here. Xiajuk poured a cup of tea and handed it to her. Are you very puzzled? Then drink this cup of tea first, and I will tell you the reason. Ji Shenyue looked down at the tea in her hand and sneered. She casually threw it. You don't have to say it. The teacup flew out, but this time before it landed on the ground. Xiajuk rolled up his sleeve and pulled it back. In the blink of an eye, it landed in his hand, and not a single drop of tea spilled out. Xiajuk looked at her with a faint smile. Are you afraid that I will do something to this tea and drug you? Ji Shenyue closed her eyes and did not reply. Xiajuk took a sip of the teacup. If it's poisonous, poison me to death first. He finished the cup of tea in a few gulps, then showed the bottom of the cup to Ji Shenyue. Are you relieved now? Ji Shenyue's voice was cold as she said frankly, I'm worried. If you did something to the tea, you can take the antidote in advance. You'll be fine after drinking it, and it might even be beneficial to your health. I can't drink it. I don't know what kind of trap I'll fall into. So, you don't have to waste any effort on the tea. Xiajuk, he looked at her with a complicated gaze for a long time and sighed. You really are. Forget it. I've known you for so many years, and I know you've always been suspicious, so I don't blame you. Ji Shenyue's voice was cold. You're wrong. You and I are strangers. Xie Fenglu has been with me for so many years, but he is already dead. When she said the last few words, her heart twisted. Xiajuk turned the cup in his hand, as if he was not surprised by Ji Shenyue's words. He only smiled and said, Although Xie Fenglu is a part of my soul, he is my main soul. I have all his memories, and I remember every detail of your interactions with him clearly. Even the person he loves is the one I like. Then, what's the difference between me and him? Why do you have to be so calculative? Chapter 3048. Xiajuk was a proud person and had a bad temper. He never bothered to explain anything to others and would send them flying without a word. No matter how much he doted on his former concubines, once they offended him, they would still be cold-blooded and punished by him. Some of them would even be smashed into pieces and reincarnated. However, he had been explaining to her in a good mood. He was not even angry when she threw his cup twice. Even he did not expect himself to be so patient. Even he felt that it was strange. Perhaps it was because his soul liked her too much, to the point of not caring about gains and losses. Ji Shenyue ignored him. So what if he was the main soul? After all, he was not Xie Fenglu. She cannot lump them together. Shenyue, I can sense his thoughts. He didn't want to save you that day, which was why he agreed to Huang Luqing's conditions. Originally, when the main soul returned to its original position, even if the main body had some memories of the main soul, it would not have a main soul's feelings. However, Perhaps his obsession with you was too strong. I felt everything he felt. I couldn't even bear to absorb all the beasts in Beast Valley, but you also absorbed most of them. Juk sighed. There was no other way. If I didn't absorb them, I wouldn't have been able to recover. If I couldn't recover, I wouldn't have been able to go to Tianjing Sea to save you. The first thing I did when I recovered that day was to rush back to find you. Unfortunately, you were no longer there. Unfortunately? Ji Shenhue asked in return. So you were still hoping that I would be trapped in that ice shell? Juk heard her unfriendly tone, and the corners of his lips curled up slightly. That's not the case. That day, Huang Luqing imprisoned you there. As long as you could break it within 10 days, she would not take your life. That was why Xie Fenglu agreed to Huang Liuqing's conditions to save you. This was his obsession before he died. This obsession was so strong that even I felt it. Ji Shenyue's heart ached again. She believed this. She believed that Xie Fenglu would not harm her that day. It turned out that Xie Fenglu had sacrificed himself to become Xie Juk for her. The image of the baby face Xie Fenglu flashed across her mind. She remembered the pale face he had when he had plotted against her in the sea. Even though he had been controlled, the shock, anger, and panic in his eyes had not been faked. Ji Shenyu felt as if her heart had been stabbed by a knife, slowly twisting and turning in pain. However, her heart that had sunk to the bottom of the ice when she discovered the truth was now slightly warm. Little Nine didn't actually betray her. Little Nine had always been that Little Nine and would not change even in death. She took a deep breath and glanced at Xie Juk in front of her. If he killed Xie Juk and tore apart his soul, would he be able to revive Xie Fenglu? Perhaps because her gaze was too unfriendly, Xie Juk propped his chin up and looked at her. Actually, I'm also a little puzzled. What are you wondering about? Why didn't you scream? Xie Juk slowly said, You're awake now. Since you already know the truth and can communicate with me normally, why don't you shout and tell me all about my schemes? I thought the first thing you would do when you woke up would be to scream. Ji Shenhue sneered. Since you're prepared, you must have covered your courtyard with some kind of barrier. I'm afraid that no one outside will hear anything even if I shout until my throat is hoarse. Why should I waste my energy? Xie Juk, he could not help but sigh. Although it's easy to deal with smart people, it's also less fun. Chapter 3049. He couldn't help but sigh. Although it's easy to deal with smart people, it's also less fun. Actually, I've always been looking forward to the moment you wake up and scream. Then, you realize that you can't call for anyone. Pervert. Xie Juk held her hand, his eyes flashing. That's perverted? Actually, I can do even more perverted things. He exerted force on his wrist and pulled her into his embrace. He lowered his head and kissed her. Ji Shenhue had lost all her strength, so she was naturally no match for him. However, just because she couldn't use her psychokinesis didn't mean that her movements would be slow. Her palm reached out in time. Xie Juk's passionate kiss landed on her palm. His eyes darkened, and he tightened his grip on her other hand. He was quite strong, and Ji Shenyue's wrist was almost broken by him. Her face turned pale. However, she was smiling. Xie Juk, I know I'm no match for you now, and I can't stop you from doing anything. However, my life is my own. I'll use it to bet with you. She was clearly in so much pain that her forehead was covered in sweat, but her words were sonorous and powerful. The light in Xie Juk's eyes changed several times. His fingers loosened slightly, but he refused to let go. Are you threatening me with your life? Xie Fenglu might fall for this trick of yours, but I won't. Besides, with my magic power, even if you die, I can still bring you back to life. Even if I can't, it's not a bad thing to imprison your soul by my side. At that time, you might be able to watch me slaughter everyone in the Sanskrit continent and make your father and mother tremble and beg for mercy at my feet. He said a bunch of ruthless words. Ji Shenhue was unmoved. She only said a few words. Why don't you try? Xie Juk was speechless. The atmosphere in the room was extremely quiet. Even the air seemed to be so heavy that it was about to drip water. Xie Juk stared at her. As the Devil Master, his aura was fully released, causing the temperature in the room to drop. There was a tank of fish in his room. Under the pressure of his aura, the fish in the tank trembled and stuck to the walls of the tank. A moment later, their bellies flipped over. Ji Shangyue was in his arms, so she naturally felt the invisible aura from his body. Her psychokinesis was sealed, and her heart was pounding so hard that it felt like it was going to jump out of her chest. However, she remained fearless and held her head high. She did not lose to him in terms of aura. After a while, just as Ji Shangyue felt that her heart was about to burst, Xie finally let go of her hand. "You are the most stubborn woman I have ever seen." Ji Shanyu took a step back and leaned against the wall. She closed her eyes and stopped talking. Xie gaze landed on her wrist, and his pupils constricted. Because of his strong grip, there was already a bruise there. It was a shocking sight. He suddenly reached out and grabbed her wrist again. Ji Shanyu suddenly opened her eyes and looked at him warily. He coughed and said, "I'll apply some ointment for you." He took out a small bottle and was about to apply the ointment on her wrist. Ji Shanyu retracted her hand and said indifferently, "I'll do it myself." She did not use Xie ointment, but took out her own from her storage space. The sparkling blue bottle looked exquisite and pleasing to the eye. Rongyue Tianlan had forced it on her. He had said that she was too easy to get injured, so he had forced more than 10 bottles of secret ointment for her to use in emergencies. Now it had come in handy. When Xie saw the small bottle, his handsome face darkened. Chapter 3050. He recognized that it was Rongyue Tianlan's medicine. He found it particularly glaring. The medicine in Ji Shanyue's hand fell to the ground and shattered. The liquid inside spilled all over the ground. "You." Ji Shanyu raised her head and glared at him. Xie also looked down at her, like a provocative child. "What about me? If you want to apply medicine, you can only apply mine. My medicine is no worse than his." Ji Shanyu felt that this person was simply unreasonable. She simply closed her eyes and ignored him. Thoughts of escaping were racing through her mind, but she couldn't think of anything for a moment. She had encountered countless dangerous situations in her life, but she had always managed to avert them. Only this time, she felt a little hopeless. Her wrist was suddenly snatched away. She struggled but couldn't break free. She opened her eyes to take a look. Xie was sitting on the side of her bed. He held her hand with one hand and applied his ointment with the other. The originally burning wound felt cool, and the pain lessened a lot. The pearl-like moonlight reflected off half of Xie face, making it look as delicate as jade porcelain. His curly and thick eyelashes formed a half-moon silhouette. His skin color was still a little light, especially when set off by his black hair. His face was as white as snow. The shape of his lips was very beautiful. When he pursed them slightly, 2 shallow dimples appeared on his cheeks. Ji Shanyu originally wanted to pull her hand back, but when she saw the dimples on his cheeks, her heart skipped a beat. Xie Xiaojiu also had dimples on his face, and the shape of the dimples was exactly the same as Xie. Usually, when this kid had a smiling face and asked her for a favor, it was easy for his 2 dimples to appear. He looked exceptionally likable. "How did your main soul escape and become Xie Xiaojiu?" Ji Xinhua blurted out. Xie raised his head and glanced at her. "Probably because of you, Ji Shanhua." "What did it have to do with her?" Xie replied as he applied the ointment for her. "Back then, you talked with my original body for so long and told me a lot of things about the outside world. At that time, my soul hadn't completely gathered, so my soul was very unstable. Accidentally, the main soul escaped while I was unconscious. It gathered the other souls and reincarnated as Xie Fenglu. After all, he had my aura. When his mother gave birth to him, she dreamed of dark clouds above her head. Mortals didn't know that it was my dark aura. They thought that he was a child full of bad luck, so they abandoned him not long after he was born, leaving him an orphan. Xie Fenglu had no memory of what happened before he was abandoned. He remembered that he was an abandoned child and was raised by an old beggar. It seemed that after the return of the main soul, his memories had become clearer. He had even recovered the memories of when he was just born. "Shinyu, This shows that we are still fated. Xie Fenglu was born because of you and died because of you. Furthermore, he was able to meet you after he became an abandoned child and was brought to the Purple Cloud sect by you. You two should be a match made in heaven. What is Rongyue Tianlan? He's not worthy of you at all. Also, he's not sincere to you. He only uses you as a substitute for his former wife. After Xie Zhuk finished applying the ointment, he lowered his head and blew on it. His breath was cold as it blew on her wrist. She felt the hair on her wrist tremble. She automatically ignored Xie Zhuk's first few words, but his last sentence made her heart sink. Chapter 3051. Former wife? He once had a wife. The corners of her lips curled up slightly. Is that so? Her tone was indifferent, and it was obvious that she did not believe him. She did not believe this. Rongyue Tianlan had clearly been engaged to her when he was more than 1,000 years old. It was impossible for him to marry before breaking off the engagement with her. Rongyue Tianlan was not that kind of person. If he really had a sweetheart and wanted to marry her, the first thing he would do would be to break off the engagement with her. After that, he would go back and marry that woman. That's right, he had indeed come back to break off the engagement, but didn't he pursue her again? Therefore, even if he had a sweetheart, she should not exist. Otherwise, he would have run back to find his sweetheart after breaking off the engagement with her and would not have pestered her. At most, he did have a sweetheart, but that sweetheart had already passed away. You don't believe me? Xie Zhuk raised his eyebrows and looked at her. What happened between him and me has nothing to do with you. Ji Shunwei directly drew the line. Xie Zhuk laughed and leaned back against the side of the bed like her. The two of them lay side by side on the bed. Ji Shunwei frowned and moved in. Xie Zhuk suddenly held one of her hands. Do you still remember the mirage we saw in the Tianjing Ocean? Do you still remember that woman in white? Ji Shunwei's heart tightened slightly. She remained calm. So what if I remember? Xie Zhuk looked at her and smiled. There was a hint of evil in his smile. That woman was his confidant. Her name was Yunxi. He met her in the Tianxi continent and has been by his side for nearly 3,000 years. He doted on her very much and did many things for her. No matter what she liked, he would always think of ways to do it for her. The scene in the mirage flashed through Ji Shunwei's mind. She took a light breath and said indifferently, Don't tell me you're saying that Yunxi is Rongyue Tianlan's sweetheart? If his sweetheart was Yunxi, then since they had been together for more than 3,000 years, why did Rongyue Tianlan only think of breaking off the engagement now? Shouldn't he have taken Yunxi far away after breaking off the engagement? Then why did he come back and pester Ji Shunwei? Had his head been squeezed by the door? Therefore, this was not true. Rongyue Shenlin and Yunxi were probably just friends. It was only right for friends to help each other. Just like herself, didn't she have a few Jianghu friends around her? She was willing to do anything for them. Ji Shunyu originally wanted to refute him in her heart, but she accidentally said what she meant. Xie Zhuk chuckled. There's a reason for this. Yunxi was indeed his sweetheart. The two of them had been inseparable since they were on the Tianxi continent. However, Rongyue Tianlan encountered a problem during his closed-door training many years ago, and a part of his soul escaped. That soul was reincarnated on another continent, and there, he fell in love with a princess named Jiyu. The two of them seemed to have some twists and turns, and Princess Jiyu married him. He glanced at Ji Shunwei and continued. Later on, probably because of Rongyue Tianlan, that princess passed away with hatred. Rongyue Tianlan's soul also died of depression not long after and returned to his body, allowing him to have the memories of that soul. He felt deeply sorry for Jiyu. He didn't know how he had found out that Jiyu had reincarnated in the Fannian continent. So he had made an agreement with Yunxi that he would return to the Fannian continent to break off the engagement and search for Jiyu's whereabouts. He wanted to make it up to her. Then, he found you in Tianwei. Chapter 3052. He can't be sure which one of you is his former wife, so he has an ambiguous relationship with both of you, holding this and that. Xie Zhuk was very talented and proficient in psychological tactics. His words were half true and half false, but they also seemed to be wrong. Ji Shangyue clenched her fists slightly. She recalled the series of events that Rongyue Tianlan had treated Tianyu and her. It was indeed like he was trying to determine something between the two sisters, and he had initially decided on Tianyu. Jiyu. For some reason, Ji Shangyue felt an inexplicable heartache when she said this name, and she even subconsciously tried to avoid it. However, her appearance was different from Tianyu's. How did he determine that? Under such circumstances, Ji Shangyue did not want to think about this relationship problem. Now was not the time to care about these feelings. Therefore, she forced herself to pull her thoughts out of those messy guesses. She knew why Xiejuk was saying all this. She smiled coldly and said indifferently, "Your story is very well made up. Whether it's true or false, I don't care." He came to the Sanskrit continent to find his wife's reincarnation, which proves that he is still very affectionate and a lover. I like it. Xiejuk did not expect her to be so obsessed. He looked at her. Lover? If he was a lover, he wouldn't have such deep feelings for Yunxi. He's only looking for his wife's reincarnation to make it up to her. He doesn't really want to love her anymore. He and Yunxi had an agreement. Yunxi's bird is a soul-searching bird, and it can find people based on their souls. Yunxi risked her life to help him go to another continent to detect Jiyu's aura. Then, she transmigrated here to test you and Tianyu. He had already tested Tianyu, and Tianyu was not. You didn't see how relaxed he was at that time. Then, he brought Yunxi to find you and test your. Ji Shangyue closed her eyes. You're really good at making up stories. Continue. This story was indeed quite touching. But how could Xiejuk know so much? It was obvious that he was making it up. Xiejuk knew what she was thinking when he saw her expression. He clenched his fists and suddenly sneered. You don't believe me? All right. Looks like you won't shed tears until you see the coffin. I'll let you see for yourself. He turned around and jumped off the bed. He sat on the chair and drew some charms in the air with his 2 fingers. Suddenly, he pointed his finger in the air and a ripple-like wall slowly appeared in the room. The wall shook a few times and an image gradually appeared. It was the scene that Xiejuk had seen when he was following Rong Yuetian. There were even sounds. However, perhaps because Xiejuk's cultivation was not up to par, the sounds and images were intermittent and blurry. However, he could still guess the latter sentence based on the first sentence, of course. Xiejuk had made some changes to the image. For example, in the image, Rongyue Tianlan promised Yunxi that if the test revealed that Ji Shangyue was his former wife, he would marry her and continue their relationship. However, he wouldn't let Yunxi down. After marrying Ji Shangyue, he would marry Yunxi. It would be enough if he only married the 2 of them in his lifetime. 1 husband and 2 wives, free and unfettered. Yunxi, who was still a little worried, sighed faintly. What if that princess Xinyu isn't Jiyu? Are you still going to find Jiyu? Chapter 3053. Rongyue Tianlan shook his head. If she isn't, then it proves that Jiyu and I are not fated to be together. I won't look for her again. If I meet her again in the future, I will compensate her with something else. Then what about Xinyu? What do you plan to do then? Yunxi asked. Rongyue Tianlan bitterly smiled and shook his head. Since she isn't Jiyu, I have no reason to marry her. Of course, my previous actions may have caused her to have other thoughts. I will compensate her with other favors. He held Yunxi's hand again. Yunxi, you and I have been together for more than 3,000 years. I like you the most. At that time, I will return to the heavenly bestowal continent with you and never come back. The scene continued to play, sometimes clear and sometimes blurry. She saw Rongyue Tianlan riding a cloud with Yunxi in the air. They first met Ji Tianyue. After confirming that Ji Tianyue wasn't Jiyu, the 2 of them rode a cloud again, heading in the direction of Carefree Island. Finally, the scene of Rongyue Tianlan and Yunxi descending from the cloud and running to a restaurant to eat appeared on the screen. Yunxi ate slowly, and Rongyue Tianlan drank a few cups to accompany her. A handsome man and a beautiful woman sat facing each other. Countless people were envious to death. The scene even showed the envious whispers of other customers in the restaurant. They said things like a match made in heaven a jade couple, and so on. Yunxi and Rongyue Tianlan obviously heard it. Yunxi's cheeks turned slightly red, and Rongyue Tianlan looked at her and smiled. Everything was understood without words. Crash! The water wall that was playing the scene suddenly collapsed. The scene disappeared, and water flowed all over the room. This spell seemed to consume a lot of willpower. After the water wall collapsed, Xie sitting body swayed. Not only was his face pale, but even his lips were white. Xinyu, you don't believe me after seeing this? I don't believe it. I don't believe it. How could you see these scenes? Besides, Tianyue has always been in the cold palace of Nantian Palace. Why would she run to that small city for no reason? She was also bullied by a few wretched men. This scene is also your doing. Xie Juk, his eyes narrowed dangerously. You still don't believe me? All right, I'll tell you everything. I couldn't find you in the crystal sky ocean. Through restoring some images, I found out that it was Rongyue Tianlan who saved you, but I couldn't find out where he hid you, so I could only use a trick to lure him out. Rongyue Tianlan had given Ji Tianyue a special sound transmitting talisman and promised her that she would save her no matter what. So, I got Ji Tianyue out. He steeled his heart and told her everything about how he and Huang Luqing had brought Ji Tianyue to the ice crevice. This time, he didn't lie at all, nor did he make up any lies. Ji Xinyu sat under the blanket. Her face was a little pale, and her eyes were lowered. No one knew what she was thinking. The room fell into silence again. A moment later, she raised her head and looked straight at Xie Juk. Where's Tianyu? In the end, what happened to her? Xie Juk froze. He did not expect her to be concerned about this under such circumstances. He paused for a moment. She's dead. A voice suddenly came from outside the door. Following that, Huang Luqing pushed open the door and walked in. Xie Juk frowned, and his voice turned cold. Huang Luqing, who let you in? Huang Luqing bowed to him and said indifferently, Young master, she will find out about this sooner or later. Why don't you tell her now? Chapter 3054. He looked at the water stains on the ground and raised his hand to draw an incantation. His technique was actually similar to Xie Juk's earlier technique. The water stains on the ground instantly formed a water mirror in the air. In the water mirror, what happened after Rongyue Tianlan and the others left Ji Tianyue behind appeared. This time, the scene was exceptionally clear, and even the conversation inside could be clearly heard. Ji Shenyue watched as Ji Tianyue cried and threw a tantrum after Rongyue Tianlan left, to the appearance of Xie Juk and the others, and finally died tragically under Xie Juk's palm. Ji Shenyue's face turned completely pale this time. The scene that Huang Luqing had created was obviously omitted by Xie Juk. Moreover, the scene in the scene, as well as the reactions of Ji Tianyue and the others, was very realistic. There should not be any exaggeration. Moreover, the overlap with the scenes that Xie Juk had created was extremely high. Even the clothes and expressions of the characters inside were exactly the same. If the scenes created by the two of them were fake, it was impossible for the overlap to be so high. Furthermore, when Xie Juk had created that scene, Huang Luqing had not come in yet. She had not seen it at all. Ji Shan, you had a photographic memory. She deliberately compared the small branches and leaves in the two videos in her mind. For example, the degree of distortion of the trunk of the tree behind Ji Tianyu, the thickness of the branches, and the distribution of the tree branches. Other things could be imitated, but if these special details were not real, it was impossible for the big tree in the two videos to be exactly the same. If these were real, then the other scenes that Xie Juk had played were probably real too. Shanyue, do you believe me now? Xie Juk looked at her with bright eyes. Ji Shanyue slowly raised her head. There seemed to be flames dancing in her beautiful eyes. I don't believe you. She stretched out her hand towards Xie Juk. Where's my voice transmission talisman? Get back to me. I want to contact Tianyue. As soon as she woke up, she realized that all the voice transmission talismans on her body had disappeared. It was obvious that Xie Juk had taken them away. She only had the blood-red voice transmission talisman left on her body. She did not know why it had been left behind, but it was useless. Juk frowned. To prevent her from leaking the secret, Sect Master Ziyun had already taken away all the voice transmission talismans on her. He looked at Ji Shanju's small white hand and turned his head away. I'll return the sound transmission talisman to you tomorrow afternoon. At that time, his recovery plan would be complete, and he wouldn't have to worry about her leaking any more secrets. Ji Shanju's face was as white as snow. She sneered. Are you afraid that I'll leak the secret? Just give me that pink sound-transmitting talisman. You should know that it's only for contacting Tianyu and can't contact anyone else. Juk, what? You don't dare to do this? If you don't even dare to do this, then it's enough to prove that everything you showed me just now is fake. It's fake. I don't believe a single word. Juk stared at her for a moment before turning to instruct Huang Luqing. Go and ask the left guardian for that pink voice transmission talisman. Huang Luqing frowned. Young master, it's all right. I recognize that voice transmission talisman. It can only be used to contact Ji Tianyu. Hurry up and go. Juk was impatient. Huang Luqing. He took a deep look at Juk before turning around and leaving. A moment later, he returned with the pink sound transmission talisman. He tossed it to Ji Shanyu, who immediately contacted Ji Tianyu, of course. There was no response from the other side. It wasn't that the other side refused to pick it up, but there was no response. The pink sound transmission talisman didn't even flash. Chapter 3055. There was only one possibility for such a situation. The other party was already dead, and the voice transmission talisman forged from each other's aura would completely lose its effect. Ji Shanyu stared at the voice transmission talisman in her hand as if she was sensing something. A moment later, the voice transmission talisman in her palm emitted flames and turned into ashes. It turned out that Ji Tianyu's soul had also been dispelled. Dispelled? What a vicious method. Although Ji Tianyu had done a few things to her later on, they weren't really evil. It was just a child's jealousy that made her mischievous. She had severed her relationship with this little sister out of disappointment. However, she had still doted on her for hundreds of years. Now, not only had she died a tragic death, her soul had also been dispelled forever. This was too much. Ji Shanju's face was ashen. Why did you kill her? Juk, why did you kill Tianyu? Ji Shanyu asked angrily. Juk did not expect her to be concerned about this. He was stunned for a moment before frowning slightly. That kind of trash no longer has any value. She even schemed against you. Why keep such a person alive? Used again. Ji Shanyu clenched her fists. Juk, in your eyes, is a relationship between people only about using and being used. Don't you have any kinship or friendship? Master was used by you. Senior brothers were also used by you. You don't care about their lives at all. To think that they usually treat you so well. In the past, when you were in danger, they were the first to rush up and save you. They treated you as a real brother, but you only wanted their lives. The more she spoke, the angrier she became. Her voice became louder and louder, and her body trembled. She was truly furious. Juk's expression changed. He opened his mouth and was about to say something when Huang Luqing suddenly stepped forward. With a flick of her finger, a wisp of wind flashed and sealed Ji Shanju's sleeping acupoint, causing her to fall asleep again. What are you doing? Juk frowned unhappily. Huang Luqing bowed to him. You can't let her nonsense mess up young master's mind. Young master, you still have a big battle tomorrow. Just now, you blindly used the mirror technique and used your vitality. You must quickly meditate and recover. You can't delay for a moment. Juk understood this point. He first carried the unconscious Ji Shanyu and laid her down on the bed, tucking her in the corner of the blanket. Then he stood up and casually threw a futon on the ground, wanting to sit on it. I'll just meditate here to recover. Huang Luqing, he suppressed his anger and raised his hand to rub his throbbing temples. Young master, this meditation is no small matter. There must be no external interference. Moreover, it would require an ice room. Young master, your recovery is the most important thing right now. As for this princess, Ji Shunyue, you and her have a long future ahead of you. You'll have plenty of time to look after her in the future, right? Young master, the bigger picture is more important. Xiejuk fell silent for a moment. How long will it take for me to recover? Huang Luqing pondered for a moment. About 2 hours. Xiejuk nodded. All right, I'll come back in 2 hours. Keep an eye on her, and don't let anything happen to her. He turned around and strode away. The room became quiet again. Huang Luqing stood in the middle of the room, her gaze landing on the unconscious Ji Shunyue. Her gaze was faintly complicated. Originally, young master had always been straightforward when dealing with women. The women he fancied who disobeyed him were either slapped to death or raped by him. Chapter 3056. However, he had paid an unprecedented amount of patience for this Ji Shunyu. After being provoked by her with a few words, he actually used the mirror technique regardless of the consequences. If he had not discovered it in time, there would have been a huge mess tomorrow, causing all his previous efforts to be in vain. This woman had a great influence on the young master. This was definitely not a good thing. Huang Luqing clenched his fists slightly, as if he wanted to do something, but he endured it. It was easy for him to kill her now, but if the young master knew, he would definitely fight him to the death. He was not afraid of risking his life, but now that things had come to this, he even had the heart to risk his life with the young master. He was afraid that once Ji Shinyu died, Xiejuk would risk his life to gather her soul and revive her. At that time, it would definitely delay tomorrow's plan. If he destroyed her soul, with Xiejuk's current feelings for her, he would definitely become enemies with her. Therefore, he could not touch this woman at the moment. However, this woman was extremely fierce and had good martial arts. She also had deep feelings for her senior brothers. If the young master successfully recovered tomorrow, her senior brothers would definitely not be able to protect her. She would probably think of ways to take revenge, and Xiejuk might not be able to subdue her in a short period of time. His eyes darkened as he slowly walked to the Moonlight Pearl. He pressed his palm on the Moonlight Pearl, and a wave of blue light flashed on the Moonlight Pearl before disappearing. The Moonlight Pearl did not change and still emitted a faint white light. After doing all this, he turned around and was about to leave when he suddenly stopped. Looking at Ji Shunyu's sleeping face, a dark light flickered in his eyes. He could not get the young master to stay away from this woman, and this woman was so dangerous. She was a huge variable. Perhaps he should completely cripple her cultivation and make her an ordinary woman. That way, no matter how much the young master doted on her, she would not be able to stir up trouble. He turned around and approached Ji Shinyu's bed, raising his palm. "What are you doing?" A cold voice suddenly came from behind him. Huang Luqing slowly turned his head and saw sect master Zi Yin leaning against the door, looking at him indifferently. With this sect master here, Huang Luqing naturally would not do anything to Ji Shinyu. He waved the fan in his hand and said, "I just want to see if she's really unconscious or just faking it." As he spoke, he had already reached the door. When he passed by sect master Ziyin, he paused and said, "I'll leave this place to you. I'm going to see the young master." With a meaningful smile, he turned and walked out. Sect master Zi Yin stood in place for a moment, then slowly walked to Ji Shinyu's bed. He lowered his head and looked at her for a moment, then sighed. Little 8, this disciple was not accepted for the mission, but because he truly liked this child. It was because he truly liked her that he accepted her as his disciple. Just now, when he had plotted against her in the Beast Valley, when she had slowly collapsed, he had seen her eyes. She had looked at him with eyes full of despair and disbelief. That kind of gaze pierced him. He naturally knew how big of a blow this matter was to Ji Shunyu, so he couldn't bear to let her know, because some sacrifices were destined to be made, and it was a task that he could not shake off. He did not want Ji Shunyu to get too close to her senior brothers. When he took her in, his other disciples had already finished their apprenticeship, and they did not see each other often. It was only on his birthday that these disciples would see each other, especially during the years when he taught Ji Shunyu martial arts. Other than the eldest disciple, the other disciples could only come back once a year. They were not allowed to come back usually. Chapter 3057. And at that time, Sect Masters Ian had intentionally or unintentionally separated her from her senior brothers, not allowing them to contact each other. He thought that by doing this, Ji Shunyu's relationship with her senior brothers wouldn't be too good, just barely average. But he didn't expect that Ji Shunyu, this child, was born with a strong sense of kinship and actually got along very well with her senior brothers. Especially after she finished her apprenticeship, she would often run over to her senior brothers' residences as guests. When he realized that something was wrong and wanted to warn her, she was already closer to them than blood brothers. Sect Master Z Yin originally wanted to hide this matter from Ji Shinyu, so when Ji Shinyu rushed back, he made her fall into a deep sleep. As long as she could sleep for 2 days, the entire matter would be settled. He could create an illusion that a blood-sucking monster had destroyed the entire Purple Cloud sect. That way, Ji Shunya wouldn't know the truth when she woke up. At most, she would plan to take revenge for her senior brothers, but she wouldn't feel the despair of being betrayed. But he didn't expect that she would wake up early, and even more didn't expect that she would investigate the matter in such a short period of time. He couldn't do anything about it. Now, this kind of blow was almost fatal to her, but there was no other way out. Shinyu, I'm sorry. Master was also helpless. Sect Master Z Yun sat in front of Ji Shinyu's bed, holding one of her hands by the bed, and sighed softly. And it was at this moment that the sudden change happened. Ji Shunyu, who had been sleeping, suddenly flipped her wrist, and her fingertips directly hit Sect Master Z Yun's waist. Sect Master Z Yun was in a daze and was caught off guard by her attack. Half of his body immediately went numb. He wanted to jump up, but Ji Shunyu was faster than him. Her finger poked a few times on his body, and as a result, Sect Master Z Yin couldn't move at all. Shunyu, his usually calm and handsome face revealed a rare look of surprise. You actually weren't asleep. Ji Shunyu jumped to the ground, her gaze landing on her master's face, flashing slightly. And then looking away, she said indifferently, "It's true that I was poked by Master, but I've already undone it." In other words, when Huang Luqing struck her sleeping acupuncture point, she had already returned to normal. She was just lying down and pretending to be asleep, and then slowly looking for an opportunity. Just now, when Huang Luqing was about to make a move on her, she naturally sensed it. On the surface, she was still sleeping, but her body was already prepared to fight to the death with the other party. She didn't expect that her master would come and stop Huang Luqing in time, allowing her to continue pretending to be asleep. Sect Master Z Yin looked at Shunyu, whose eyes were sparkling, and had mixed feelings. "Shinyu, your martial arts seems to have improved quite a bit." His acupoint sealing skills were clearly top-notch. Even a top-notch expert wouldn't be able to unseal his acupoint after a day and a night. Who would have thought that Ji Shunyu would be able to solve it in just 2 hours and even beat him at his own game? Ji Shunyu lowered her eyes slightly. Her martial arts had indeed improved a lot compared to before, especially after cultivating on Rongyue Tianlan Small Island. The effect was even more obvious, and it was even becoming more obvious. She had said so much nonsense to Xiejuk just now because she wanted to buy time to unseal her acupoints. She did not believe the truth Xiejuk had told her at all. Compared to the safety of his senior brothers, all those emotional entanglements were nothing. For the time being, it was not in her consideration. However, even she herself did not expect that one day she would make a move on her most respected and beloved master and make him unable to move. Chapter 3058. Looking at her master who was sitting there, she hesitated for a moment. Then, she steeled her heart and went to her master's storage space to search for her things. There were a lot of things in Sect Master Z Yun's storage space. It was even more complete than a large warehouse. It was undoubtedly difficult to search for a few small voice transmission talismans in such a large storage space, not to mention that she had to be face-to-face with her master when searching for his storage space. This was a position that she had never thought of before. If someone looked in from outside the window now, They would think that she was being rebellious and trying to take liberties with her master. Sect Master Z Yin naturally knew what she was searching for. He didn't say anything and just looked at her, letting her search. Being stared at like this, Ji Shunyue became even more nervous. Sweat dripped from the tip of her nose. She suddenly said, "Master, do you really have the heart to kill my senior brothers? They clearly respect you so much and spend so much effort on your birthday every year. If they hear any disrespectful words about you outside, they will rush up and fight with their lives. Are they just tools in your eyes? Master, are you being controlled by that devil, Xiejuk? I don't believe that you're the guardian of the devil race. You clearly hate evil the most." Ji Shunyue originally spoke to ease the awkwardness, but when she said this, her heart was touched, and her eyes couldn't help but turn red. Sect Master Ziyun's face was slightly pale, and he lowered his eyes. "Shunyue, I am indeed the left guardian of the devil race. Xiejuk, he can't control me." "No, I don't believe it. You don't have any devil aura at all. How can you be a devil with so much immortal aura? Master is indeed not a devil. Master is a fallen immortal." Sect Master Z Yin finally revealed his true identity. Ji Shunyue, fallen immortals did exist. Fallen immortals were originally immortals, but because of something, they fell into the devil realm and became a devil. Although such a person was in the devil sect, if he didn't do anything evil, there wouldn't be any devil aura on his body. "Master, isn't cultivation good? Why would I become a devil?" "Master, look, all your disciples are also cultivating the immortal Tao. Why would he become a devil?" It was all because of love. However, he didn't want to tell Ji Shunyue this reason. He simply closed his eyes and said indifferently, "Shunyue, Master has his own difficulties." It seemed that persuasion would not work. Master had already made up his mind to use his disciples as sacrifices for the Devil Lord to recover his power. Ji Shun, you felt a sense of helplessness. This feeling of powerlessness spread to her limbs and bones, causing her chest to feel stifled and suffocated. It was as if there was a fire burning inside, but she couldn't find a way out. She pursed her lips and said, "Master, I'm sorry. I won't watch my senior brothers die. I'll expose this matter." Her fingertips finally touched a sound-transmitting talisman. She hurriedly took it out to take a look, and her heart was filled with joy. This sound-transmitting talisman was the Blue Star Talisman that she used to contact Rong Yuetian. She hurriedly put it into her storage space and was about to take out other things when there was a sudden movement at the door, followed by a low cry. Little Junior's sister, Feng Wuji, eldest senior brother. He actually came in, and when he saw Ji Shinyu lying in Sect Master Ziyun's arms at the door, he was dumbfounded. Ji Shinyu did not give him any time to react. With a flash of her body, she suddenly charged in his direction. Feng Wuji instinctively dodged, and Ji Shunyue rushed out the door like a bolt of lightning. Chapter 3059. By the time Feng Wuji reacted and wanted to grab her, he did not even manage to grab a corner of her clothes. His expression changed. He wanted to chase after her, but was stopped by his master. "Wuji, help me unseal my acupoints." Feng Wuji quickly went over to unseal his acupoints. "Left Guardian, Shinyu will definitely inform the others once she escapes. I'm afraid that tomorrow's plan will not work. We must stop her immediately. I think we should inform Military Advisor Huang." At this point, he could no longer continue, because the moment Sect Master Ziyun's acupoint was unsealed, he had hit his death acupoint with a backhand. He slowly fell to the ground. Before he fell, his eyes were still wide open as he stared at Grandmaster Ziyun. Why? Why? He asked the question in his heart, but he could no longer wait for the answer. Grandmaster Ziyun looked down at his corpse and said coldly, "There's no reason. Elder Lin, I've tolerated you for a long time." Feng Wuji used to be his eldest disciple, but later on, Elder Lin of the demon race took over his body to conceal the demonic qi in his body. He was also a spy that Huang Luqing had planted beside Grandmaster Ziyun to help him recruit disciples and manage everything in the Beast Valley. Grandmaster Z Yin moved his body and went out. Ji Shenyu already had a plan in mind while she was escaping. The moment she escaped, she activated the sound transmission talisman with Rongyue Tianlan. At the most crucial moment, she thought of him first. Perhaps it was because he was sleeping in the middle of the night. The sound transmission talisman flashed for a long time, but no one picked up. Ji Shenyu was burning with anxiety. She wanted to reach out and shake the person on the other end of the sound transmission talisman awake. Rongyue Tianlan, you pig. Sleeping like a pig. She dialed twice but could not get through. She had no choice but to put it aside for now. She looked up at the sky. It was almost 5 o'clock. Even if she ran out to get help now, it would be too late. After all, the nearest sect was almost 4 hours away. It would take 8 hours to go back and forth. By then, the Great Array would have been activated. Distant water could not quench a present thirst. If she wanted to save someone, she had to take a risk. Ji Shenyu thought that as long as she raised her arm and shouted, as long as her voice was loud enough, she would be able to attract everyone to watch. At that time, she would only need to shout, "That's a soul-absorbing array, a deadly array, an array set up to help Xiejuk recover his cultivation." She knew that no one would really believe her if she screamed like this. But after all, it was a matter of life and death, so they would still be suspicious. Once there was suspicion, there would be changes and the formation would not be set up again. Then, the lives of her senior martial brothers and junior martial nephews would be saved and the tragedy would not happen. She also knew that if she raised her arm and called for help, she would definitely attract Huang Luqing and Xiejuk to chase after her. Her own situation was worrying, but she couldn't care less right now. Her eldest senior brother had already discovered that she had run away. After he unsealed her master's acupoints, the two of them would quickly chase after her and inform Huang Luqing and Xiejuk. It would only take a moment for the four of them to chase after her. She had no time to inform her senior martial brothers one by one. She and her senior martial brothers were very close. How could she bear to watch them die? Therefore, she was going all out. Xiejuk's courtyard was a little remote. It was not close to the courtyards where the other senior martial brothers lived. There was even a large distance between them. Chapter 3060. Xiejuk's courtyard was at the top of the mountain. While the guest rooms were halfway up the mountain, Ji Shenyu's heart felt like a basin of fire was burning, causing the blood in her entire body to flow faster. She dashed down like lightning, the cold wind brushing past her cheeks. She even felt that the wind was scorching hot. Seeing that the dense mass of buildings in front of her was getting closer and closer, Ji Shenyu steeled her heart and finally shouted out. She had used her inner strength to shout out these words, so she could guarantee that her voice would reach the corners of the large building in front of her, and that everyone could hear her. After shouting, she heaved a sigh of relief and raised her hand to wipe the sweat off her forehead. No matter what, she had shouted out, so everyone should have heard it soon. Someone would come out. Then after she shouted, no one flew out of the large building. Even the guards did not move. It was deep into the night in the dense mass of buildings, and not a single sound could be heard. What was going on? Ji Shenyu finally arrived in front of the building. Just as she was about to charge forward and shout again, she was bounced back by a faint wave of light. When Ji Shenyu saw the light wave clearly, her heart sank to the bottom of the ground. Barrier. All the buildings here were shrouded by an invisible barrier. There was not a single gap. This kind of barrier was undoubtedly soundproof. So even if she shouted until her voice was hoarse, the people inside would not be able to hear her. A light laugh suddenly sounded. Ji Shenyu suddenly turned her head, and a man slowly appeared from the shadows not far away. He was dressed in a light green robe, had elegant features, and was as handsome as jade. He was like a hermit young master. Who would have thought that such a person would be the military advisor of the demon race who killed without blinking an eye? Could he be the instigator of all this? Ji Shenyu's eyes narrowed, and she raised her hand to draw her Azura saber. The moon god sword had disappeared the moment she was knocked out. Ji Shenyu had not seen it since she woke up, so she decided not to count on that random divine sword anymore. She had to rely on herself at the crucial moment. It seems that I still underestimated Princess Shenyu to be able to escape in this kind of situation. Fortunately, this military advisor made preparations early on and set up a barrier here, causing Princess Shenyu's efforts to be in vain. Huang Luqing waved his folding fan lightly as he spoke, a trace of guilt appearing on his handsome face. Ji Shunyue took a deep breath, too lazy to talk nonsense with him. The Azura saber slashed directly at the barrier. Huang Liuqing's eyes flashed, but she didn't have any intention of stopping her. The Azura saber struck the barrier with an aura that could split mountains and sever seas, but it was as if it had struck the air. The blade had clearly cut into the barrier, but it did not make the slightest sound. Then, the knife bounced back. Ji Shenyu's fingers were numb from the rebounding force, and her entire body was cold. She couldn't open this barrier. It wasn't something she could open. This barrier could only be set up by exalted immortals, and only exalted immortals could break it. She suddenly raised her head to look at Huang Luqing. You're an exalted immortal? Huang Luqing waved his fan. Our Sharkman doesn't cultivate the immortal Tao, so I'm not an exalted immortal, but at my level, I'm roughly at the exalted immortal realm level. This person's ability to conceal himself was really deep. Ji Shenyu knew that he usually hid his strength, but she didn't expect him to hide so much. Chapter 3061. She was clearly an exalted immortal, but she usually kept a low profile like an immortal monarch. Princess Shenyu, what do you want now? Huang Luqing looked as if victory was already in her hands. Huang Luqing, you set up such a large barrier here. When the people inside wake up and see this barrier, they will be suspicious. Do you think the people inside are idiots? Ji Shenyu sneered. Huang Luqing closed her fan and smiled. You're wrong. This barrier can only be seen by the people outside. The people inside can't see it, and they can even come out at will. But do you think they can come out at this time? Ji Shenyu. Her face was pale, and she retreated step by step. Huang Luqing slowly approached. Princess Shenyu, although you are the young master's favorite, you have tried to ruin my plans time and time again. This is making things difficult for me. Perhaps I should kill you and end this once and for all. As she spoke, she slowly opened her fan, whoosh. A white figure flashed over and landed between Ji Shenyu and Huang Luqing, shielding Ji Shenyu behind her. That white figure only said 2 words to Ji Shenyu, go. Master. The one protecting her behind him was Sect Master Ziyun. Her master actually came to save her. Ji Shenyu's eyes widened and her heart surged. Master, she called out with a trembling voice. Go. Sect Master Ziyun threw out another word. Although Ji Shenyu's heart was filled with countless questions and emotions, she also knew that she could not stay for long. She turned around and flew away. Huang Luqing looked at Sect Master Ziyun, who was blocking her path. Sect Master, are you trying to betray your master? She is my disciple. Letting her go will not hinder the Devil Master's recovery plan. Sect Master Ziyun stared into Huang Liuqing's eyes. Let her go. I will not allow anything to happen to her. Huang Luqing smiled and said in a mocking tone, I didn't know that Sect Master was so concerned about his disciple. With you like this, I'm worried about the Great Array tomorrow. There are so many disciples and grand disciples. What if you can't bear to part with them? Sect Master Ziyun's face was slightly pale, but his voice was cold. That's different. Tomorrow, the array will be activated as usual. I know my responsibilities. Huang Luqing nodded. It's good that you know. She glanced at the other party and suddenly sneered. Don't tell me you also fell in love with that princess. Sect Master Ziyun was stunned. Then he shouted angrily, Bullshit! This seat treats her like a daughter, and there is absolutely no love between us. TSK. To think that the Sect Master Ziyun, who has always been known for his elegance, would actually swear. How rare. Huang Luqing was half mocking and half laughing. Suddenly, her face changed. You may like her or treat her like a woman, but you can't delay the Devil Lord's recovery plan. If she escapes like this, she will definitely inform the people outside. Sect Master Zian looked up at the sky and said indifferently, she doesn't have any communication talismans on her, so if she wants to inform the other sects, she has to make a trip personally. The Purple Cloud sect was located in a remote area and was not close to any other sect. The nearest sect would take 4 hours to travel to and fro, so it would take 8 hours to travel back and forth. After 8 hours, the array would be completely activated and the Devil Lord's martial arts would be completely restored. What was there to be afraid of? What's more, that sect is not a big one, and the highest cultivation is only a mortal monarch. Moreover, the leader of that sect is usually timid and afraid of trouble. Even if Xinyu asks him for help, he will not come. Most likely, he will lead his disciples to other sects to discuss countermeasures, so there is nothing to worry about. Chapter 3062. Huang Luqing raised her eyebrows and said, "It seems that Sect Master has calculated everything very clearly. However, I heard that this princess has the ability to travel 1,000 miles in an instant. What if she uses this technique to inform others?" The Purple Cloud Sect Master sneered. Military advisor Huang probably doesn't know that other than that small sect that is not worth worrying about, the closest sect to the Purple Cloud sect that is qualified to destroy is at least 8 hours away from here. Even if Xinyu notifies them now, they won't be able to come in time. Huang Luqing sighed. All right, for the sake of the sect master, I will let the princess go. However, you know the temper of the Devil Lord. After he comes out of seclusion, if he sees that the princess is missing, I am afraid that he will fly into a rage. Maybe he will think that I killed the princess and then threw her corpse away. Maybe it will cause chaos because of this. Sect Master, what do you think about this? Do you want me to tell the truth? Or do you want me to cooperate with you so that Devil Master can believe our reasons and then focus on the recovery of the array? At this point, the two of them were already grasshoppers on the same rope, so Sect Master Yin naturally chose to cooperate. Huang Luqing smiled. Sect Master is indeed a smart person. Let's go and deal with the aftermath. The two of them left together. Before leaving, Huang Luqing glanced in the direction Ji Shanyu escaped with a smile on her lips. This result was better than he had expected. From now on, he was no longer afraid that Ji Shanyu would pose any threat to the Devil Master. Although the Devil Master was very promiscuous and had a lot of concubines, he was still a clean freak. No matter how beautiful or delicate a girl was, once she lost her chastity, she was worthless in the eyes of the Devil Master. Half an hour later, Xie Juk hurried out. Just as Huang Luqing had expected, he flew into a rage when he saw Ji Shanyu disappear. He really thought that Huang Luqing had secretly killed her. Fortunately, Sect Master Ziyun and Huang Luqing worked together to create a lie, saying that Ji Shanyu had indeed escaped. Xie Juk still believed in Sect Master Ziyun, his former master, so he stopped looking for trouble with Huang Luqing. He still wanted to go out and look for her, but Huang Luqing stopped him, saying that after Ji Shanyu escaped, she would definitely inform the others. Once the Devil Lord's identity was exposed, and the Devil Lord's martial arts had not recovered, it would be an irreversible loss to the entire Devil clan. Furthermore, the Devil Lord's safety was also a problem, so the Devil Lord's recovery time could not be delayed. Huang Luqing's last sentence was well said. Young master, as long as you recover all of your power, you will be the strongest person in this world. At that time, if you want to find Princess Ji Shanyu, won't it be easy? Even if you want her to be your wife, it won't be too difficult. If you can't recover your strength, then young master will be desperately hunted down by the people of this world. At that time, your life will be in danger. So how can you talk about continuing your fate with Princess Ji Shanyu? These words finally moved Xie Juk's heart. After nodding, he looked at Huang Luqing and could not help but ask, Huang Luqing, I see that you're even more anxious than me. Huang Luqing's gaze landed on his face. After looking at him for a moment, she turned her head away. This subordinate only wants young master to fully recover. Actually, I've always been very curious. For the sake of my resurrection, you persevered for a full 30,000 years and painstakingly planned. Now, For the sake of my complete recovery, you've exhausted your efforts. What exactly are you after? Chapter 3063. A demon was a demon. Being two-faced and treacherous was the label of a demon. Siejuk had also returned to the declining demon world. The demons that were fighting each other for territory, and no one knew each other. The demons there did not know that there was once a demon master. The name of Demon Master Siejuk had long been forgotten by the demons. After he reported his name, those demons were all confused. Time was like a pig slaughtering knife, cutting the glory of the past into pieces. Siejuk's name was almost forgotten by everyone in the Sanskrit continent. Compared to them, Huang Luqing was so loyal that it shocked the world. A hint of sadness flashed across Huang Luqing's eyes. Yes, what was he after? He turned around indifferently. Sharkmen are all obsessed. I just want young master to remember everything in the past. All right, young master's complexion is not good. There are still 2 hours before the formation opens. Young master should sit down and recuperate. I'll go and make some arrangements to make sure nothing goes wrong. He turned around and left. Siejuk frowned. Remember everything in the past? Because he had slept for too long, his memories were indeed not complete. There was a large gap between them. However, the most important thing was that he had already remembered everything. What was the point of remembering some minor details? He shook his head and thought of Ji Xinyue again. He was still worried and looked at Sect Master Ziyan. Left Guardian, did you see Xinyue escape with your own eyes? Sect Master Ziyan nodded slightly and answered with a simple word, yes. Siejuk's eyes flickered slightly. As long as she was fine, it was fine. It was the same when he completely recovered and went to search for her. She was the obsession of that part of his soul, and she had also indirectly become his obsession. He would not give up until he obtained her. He seemed to have thought of something and instructed, if she runs away, so be it. In the future, I will naturally have a way to make her return to my side and be my woman. Left Guardian, you can follow Huang Luqing and make the best preparations to open the formation. He was originally worried about Huang Luqing, afraid that he would do something to Ji Xinyue in advance. So he wanted Sect Master Ziyan to follow him to prevent him from causing trouble. As soon as the words left his mouth, he felt that he could not make it too obvious. However, he believed that with Sect Master Ziyan's intelligence, he would be able to guess it. Sect Master Ziyan lowered his eyes and agreed, then turned around and left. When Sect Master Ziyan found Huang Luqing, he was sitting on a huge rock on a mountain peak, lost in thought. The distant sky had already turned a little blue, and a faint trace of white could be seen. The sky was about to brighten. Huang Luqing glanced sideways at Sect Master Ziyan and said with a faint smile, "What are you doing here? Spying on me? Are you afraid that I'll secretly hurt your precious disciple?" Sect Master Ziyan's voice was cold. "Young master asked me to come." This sentence made Huang Luqing choke. Huang Luqing stopped talking and turned to look at the sea of clouds in the sky. Sect Master Ziyan didn't say anything as he looked into the distance. You should have already escaped, right? If nothing unexpected happened, she should have gone to look for Rongyue Tianlan. With Rongyue Tianlan by her side, no one should be able to hurt her. It was just that this incident had really broken her heart. He was afraid that their master-disciple relationship would be severed from now on. No matter what, it was fine as long as she lived well. Ji Xinyue did not go to Rongyue Tianlan's place. It was not that she threw a tantrum and did not want to go, but that she could not go. She was not living well. She was living very hard now. She was poisoned. Chapter 3064. After she escaped from the Purple Cloud sect, her analysis was the same as the sect masters. She had thought of all the reinforcements she could think of. Other than Rongyue Shenlin, no one else could arrive in time. She used the blue voice transmission talisman to contact Rongyue Shenlin twice, but it was like a clay ox sinking into the sea. No one picked up at all. Did he really not sense it, or did he deliberately not pick it up? Ji Xinyue finally remembered that they were still in a Cold War when they broke up. Ever since she talked back to him, He had obviously become cold to her. He had been so polite that he didn't even touch her hand anymore. When he was about to leave, he didn't even greet her and just left. He hadn't returned since he left. The images that Siejuk had shown her flashed through her mind again, and she couldn't help but have a thought. Did he really go to see Yunshi? Did he really let Yunshi look for his wife in his previous life? Looking at the images that Siejuk and Huang Luqing had shown her, Rong Yuishanlin was indeed with Yunshi. Had they already returned to the island? Had Yunshi, that bird, determined that she wasn't Jiyu based on the aura she had left behind, so Rong Yuishanlin had completely let go of her? Now, he had finally let go of everything from his previous life and flew away with Yunshi. So he didn't even bother to pick up her voice transmission talisman. No, that was fake. Siejuk must have deliberately made it up to make her give up. She didn't want to believe it. But why didn't he pick up the voice transmission talisman? Ordinary immortals wouldn't sleep so soundly, right? Or had he also encountered an accident? Countless thoughts churned in her heart like boiling water, causing her heart to tighten and ache. In addition, she was worried about the safety of her senior brothers, but she couldn't do anything at the moment. She really wanted to cry. She really wanted to find someone to rely on so that she could cry to her heart's content. But she couldn't. Now was not the time for her to be weak and cry. She had to think of a way to save her senior brothers. She couldn't just watch them die. She closed her eyes and suppressed all the messy thoughts in her mind. Right now, saving people was her first priority. Everything else was fleeting. She couldn't let her imagination run wild. She should quickly think of a plan to save people. But even though she had thought of every single path, none of them seemed to work. What should she do? What should she do? She saw that the eastern sky was gradually turning white, but she couldn't think of a decent plan. She was anxious, so anxious that the blood in her body was boiling like boiling water. Her body was hot, and her face was red. However, she was so focused on saving people that she didn't notice her abnormality. She looked up at the sky. The sky was high and the clouds were light. There was only the flowing wind around her. Standing there, she felt a sense of helplessness, as if she had been abandoned by the entire world. Too many things had happened tonight, and she had suffered too many blows. When one suffered too many blows, one's nerves would become numb. Some people would go crazy after receiving a fatal blow. They would be at a loss, and their minds would go blank. On the other hand, after Ji Shenyue suffered a blow, she would subconsciously suppress all of her messy thoughts and focus on the important points. She stood there in a daze for a moment, and then made up her mind to run back to the Purple Cloud sect to see if she could break the array before it opened. She was going all out. Worst comes to worst, she, Xia, and Huang. These two people would have a bloody battle. Perhaps they could also obstruct them from activating that man-eating array. Just as she was about to use the teleportation technique, she staggered and felt dizzy. Chapter 3065. Just as she was about to use the teleportation technique, she staggered and felt dizzy. After she steadied herself, she realized that something was wrong with her body. It was already the beginning of winter, and her clothes were not thick, but her body was abnormally hot. Waves of heat surged through her body and gradually gathered at an indescribable part below her abdomen. Scorching heat, emptiness, anxiety, fear, and longing, countless indescribable feelings howled at her body, causing her body to go weak. Was she poisoned? This poison was so strange. Ji Xinyu had never tasted such a feeling before. It was like pain and longing, and the faces of men flashed through her mind. It was strange. She had known many men in her life, and there was no lack of beauties. However, in her eyes, they were no different from dirt and stone, and could not arouse any pink thoughts. But now, when she thought of these people again, she felt that they were all so pleasing to the eye that she wanted to pounce on them. In the end, Rongyue Tianlan's appearance appeared in her mind. In the depths of her heart, she had some kind of indescribable resentment towards him. But at this moment, when his appearance flashed through her mind, the blood in her body surged even more violently. In a trance, she seemed to see him standing not far away, looking at her with a smile. The blood in her head buzzed, and her body acted before her brain, pouncing towards him. Rong Yue Tianlan. At this moment, the only thing she thought of was his embrace. She wanted to jump into his arms and let him hug her. Bang! She crashed into Rong Yue Tianlan's embrace. Her knees hurt terribly, and the intense pain made her sober up instantly. There was no Rong Yue Tianlan in front of her. There was only a slender stone standing there. She hugged the stone, and her knees hit the stone. She took 2 steps back and finally understood what poison she had been poisoned with. Aphrodisiac. What did she get poisoned? Who drugged her? Huang Luqing? Xiejuk? The latter was more likely. After all, this person always had delusions about her and did things by hook or by crook. Ji Shunyu's body became hotter and hotter, and her vision became blurry. She pinched herself again, and the pain stimulated her to stay awake. She knew that finding the real culprit was secondary. The most important thing was to detoxify. Detoxify. She tried her best to suppress her boiling qi and blood. Her fingers trembled as she rummaged through her storage space. Originally, she had a lot of medicine in her storage space. However, after being caught and fainted again and again, most of the medicine in there had been taken away, especially the last time she fell asleep. Xiejuk was probably dissatisfied that she had used Rong Yue Ishanlin's medicine, so he took advantage of the time when she was unconscious to loot all the medicine in her storage space. Now, there were only 3 or 4 bottles of golden sur medicine in there, and Xiejuk had forced them on her. There was no medicine for that. There wasn't even an antidote for the drug. Bastard. Despicable bastard. Despicable. Ji Shunyu bit her lips tightly, using the pain to keep her mind clear. This was the first time she had encountered such a situation, and her body was so hot that she couldn't stop shaking. It was a cold day, and she wasn't wearing thick clothes, but she felt so hot. It was as if she was wearing a large cotton-padded jacket during the hottest days of the summer. The heat made her feel irritated and irritated. The tip of her nose, forehead, and chin were all covered in sweat. It was so hot that she wished she could tear off all the clothes on her body. Chapter 3066. However, her rationality told her that she absolutely could not do that. She looked around anxiously and finally saw a small river not far away. She staggered and jumped into the river. The river water was bone-chilling and slightly relieved some of the heat in her body. It also made her slightly confused mind clear again. She squatted in the river for about a quarter of an hour and knew that the cold river water could only slightly relieve the symptoms, but it could not detoxify the poison she still needed to save people. Time waited for no one. She had to find a way to detoxify the poison. But how could this poison be detoxified? Who could detoxify her? Who could detoxify her in such a desolate place? She squatted in the river and trembled slightly. This was the first time in her life that she felt so helpless. Tears welled up, but she forced them back. She could not cry. Crying was useless, because she had to endure the strange heat in her body. She bit her lips until they bled. She wiped her eyes with her hand, and her fingertips were stained with blood, but she did not notice. She thought of Rong Yue Tianlan again. He was a medical immortal, and his medical skills were extraordinary. If he was here, he might be able to detoxify her. She trembled as she took out the voice transmission talisman again. The blood on her fingertips stained the voice transmission talisman, and the talisman actually emitted a faint light wave and absorbed all the blood. Ji Shenyue's mind was filled with thoughts of asking for help, so she did not notice this. Her fingers trembled as she activated the voice transmission talisman again. Thankfully, this time, the voice transmission talisman lit up for a moment before the other side picked it up. The moment the call connected, Ji Shenyue's heartbeat almost went out of control. She let out a long sigh of relief. Heat and grievance instantly surged up. She trembled as she said, "Your Highness Rongyue," because of her unstable state of mind, and also because of the effects of the drug, her originally clear and melodious voice sounded watery and crooked, with a hint of hoarseness. Finally, a reply came from the other side. "For you." Ji Shangyue staggered in the water and almost fell into the water. That voice belonged to a girl. It was as clear as jade and as ethereal as the clouds. Even without seeing the person, she could feel that the other party was a peerless beauty. Ji Shangyue stared blankly at the voice transmission talisman in her hand. The image that Xie had shown her flashed before her eyes. Rongyu Atonlan and that girl called Yunxi were walking side by side. Due to the effects of the drug, her breathing was heavy. Her body was hot, but her heart was cold. She had always been skeptical about what Xie had shown her. She had planned to ask him directly when she saw Rongyu Ishinlin one day and ask him for confirmation. She wanted to get the truest answer from him. But now, it seemed that what Xie had shown her was most likely true. Voice transmission talismans were usually carried around at all times. If Rongyu Atonlan cared about her, she would have kept a voice transmission talisman with her at all times. Now, this voice transmission talisman was with Yunxi. "Hey, may I ask who you are?" the woman asked curiously. Ji Shunyu's heart had already sunk to the bottom of an icy abyss, but she still refused to give up. Forcing herself to calm down, she asked, "Where is Her Highness Rongyu?" You asked him to pick up the sound transmitting talisman." His voice trembled slightly. The person on the other side paused for a moment, then said, "He's still resting." "Who are you?" Ji Shunyu's finger flicked again, and the blue sound transmitting talisman fell into the river and was washed away in the blink of an eye. She raised her head and looked at the sky. The sky was about to brighten, and there was a bit of white in the east. Chapter 3067. It was a moment before dawn, and most people had yet to wake up. His voice transmission talisman was in Yunxi's hands. He was still resting. All these factors combined made it easy for people to deduce a hopeless conclusion. Rongyu Ishinlin and Yunxi were really cohabiting, and there was a promise between them. Rongyu Ishinlin probably confirmed that Ji Shunyue was not Jiyu through Yunxi's bird, so he finally let go of the burden in his heart and began to fulfill his promise with Yunxi. The two of them were deeply in love, and it was natural for them to do something good. Although Ji Shunyue was still a virgin and had not experienced those things between men and women, she had been in the pugilistic world and had come into contact with many flirtatious men. These men also treated her as a man, so they did not have any scruples when talking in front of her. Naturally, the men would talk about women and even some things in bed. For example, they would be tired after doing things, so tired that they would not want to move. If they were really tired, even a person who was usually alert would sleep like a pig. She had been unable to contact Rongyu Ishinlin just now. Was it because they were too tired and could not hear or see? The aphrodisiac originally made her feel like her body was on fire, but at this moment, her heart felt like it was frozen. She took a deep breath, and then another, to hold back the tears that were about to come. She desperately told herself that Rongyu Ishinlin did not owe her anything. Although he had been ambiguous with her a few times, he probably treated her as someone else and doted on her. He even risked his life to save her a few times. If there was a debt, it was she who owed him. She owed him a favor, so she could not blame him. But since he did not really love her, why did he mess up her spring water? Bastard. She clearly did not want to have any feelings for him. She clearly did not want to love him. But because of his forceful intervention, she accidentally fell down. Now, it was not too late. It was not too late for her to find out. After all, she had not promised him anything, and she had not even reciprocated his feelings. So it was not too late. She could still extricate herself beautifully in time. A few rooster crows came from afar. She trembled in shock and looked up at the sky. The sky in the distance was already showing a faint green color. The sky was about to brighten. Her senior brothers. No, now is not the time to be swayed by loyalty. She had to ask Rongyu Tianlan for help. Even if she didn't ask him to cure her poison, at least she had to ask him to come to the Ziyun sect to save her senior brothers. She subconsciously went to look for the voice transmission talisman, but the talisman had long been washed away by the current. She searched the water for a long time, but to no avail. She hugged her arms and squatted in the water, lost in thought for a moment. Then, she stood up trembling. No, she had to save herself. Azure City was a small city, and it was the closest city to the Purple Cloud sect. This place was more than 200 miles away from the Purple Cloud sect. For the people in the city, it would take a whole day to reach the Purple Cloud sect. However, for cultivators with cultivation skills, it was only a 10-minute journey. When the sun had just risen, the door of one of the most famous physicians in Azure City was filled with loud bangs. Physician Lay suppressed his anger and opened the door. Before he could see the face of the person who was banging on the door, a woman drenched from head to toe rushed in. She grabbed his collar and said 2 words in a trembling voice, "Save me." The woman's fingers were hot, and her face was also hot. There was an unhealthy red color. Her eyes seemed to be filled with water and fire as she looked straight at Physician Lay. Chapter 3068. She staggered and almost fell into Dr. Lay's arms. Fortunately, she steadied herself in time, but her body couldn't help but tremble. It was as if she wanted to do something, but she resisted. After all, Dr. Lay was an experienced and knowledgeable doctor. Seeing the woman's expression, he took her pulse and frowned. "Miss, you've been poisoned by an aphrodisiac." This woman was naturally Ji Shunyu. She resisted the desire to pounce on Dr. Lay and nodded. She said hoarsely, "Save me." It was useless. It was completely useless. Dr. Lay, Dr. Li, Dr. Zhang, Ji Shunyu staggered. She had already eaten all the pills and ointments that these doctors had prescribed for her, but they couldn't cure the aphrodisiac's poison at all. "Miss, this old man can't cure this kind of aphrodisiac." "Miss, this drug can't be cured." "Miss, please redeem this little one's incompetence." "Miss, this drug." "I'm afraid there's only one way to cure this drug, and a man's true despair." Her body was so hot that it was about to explode, and her vision was turning black. It was as if countless ants had drilled into her limbs and bones, wantonly crawling around inside. It made her want to scream, to moan. If it's not cured, what will happen? She forced herself to ask. These doctors had never seen such a strong aphrodisiac before, and they were all helpless. Of course, they still admired this girl. If an ordinary girl had been poisoned by such a drug, she would have long forgotten about people under the influence of the drug. Perhaps she would even pounce on a bald or pockmarked man. However, this woman had been forcing herself to stay awake. Not only did she not pounce on these doctors like wolves or tigers, she even kept a distance from them as much as possible. However, she shouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. "If it's not cured, I'm afraid Miss will explode and die." "Miss, your life is important." Ji Shunyu rushed out of the door. It was still early, and the streets were deserted. Ji Shunyu staggered along the streets in the direction of the only small building in the city. She was not afraid of death, but her life was connected to the lives of hundreds of people in the Purple Cloud sect. Therefore, she could only cure the poison. She had already decided not to marry in this life, so there was no need to protect her body at this critical moment. After curing the poison, she would return to the Purple Cloud sect to save people and fight Xiejuk. If she couldn't save them, then she would just die with them. This world was too ugly, and she had lived long enough. Rongyu Tianlan felt exceptionally uneasy tonight. By the time he and Yunxi returned to Carefree Island, it was already late at night. They naturally discovered that Ji Shanyue had disappeared. Before the girl left, she left him a message. "Thank you for saving me. Goodbye." The date was early in the morning. Even the time was included. Rong Yuetian could almost imagine the smug look on the little girl's face when she left. The soul-searching bird circled around the island before landing on Yunxi's shoulder and chirping happily. Yunxi translated the bird language for Rong Yuetianlan. She said that the soul-searching bird felt that the aura left behind by Ji Shunyu here was similar to Ji Yu's aura. There was a high possibility that the two of them were the same person. Of course, if he wanted to confirm it, he still needed to meet the person in person. According to Rong Yue Tianlan's original intention, he couldn't wait to go out and search immediately. However, the soul-searching bird was very tired and was not willing to travel through the night to find someone. It simply spread its wings and lay on the ground, refusing to fly no matter what. Yunqi also advised Tianlan, Princess Shun Yu only left. There won't be any accidents in just one night. Let's rest for the night and go find her tomorrow. I can see that you're also very tired right now. Why don't you rest for a while and have the energy to look for her tomorrow? It won't delay anything. Chapter 3069. Rongyu and Tianlan had been running around for the past few days and was extremely exhausted. After hearing Yunqi's words, he looked at the sky again. It was indeed too late. He looked at Yunqi again. Her hair was slightly messy, and her beautiful face was slightly haggard. She looked very sleepy. Under such circumstances, he was really embarrassed to ask Yunqi to go out and look for someone. He thought for a while and tried to contact Ji Shunyue with the voice transmission talisman. After a while, the voice transmission talisman was picked up. Ji Shunyue's voice came through. "What's the matter?" Rongyu and Tianlan chatted with her for a while and found out that she had returned to the Ziyun sect. Everyone in the Ziyun sect was safe now. She had been too tired from the journey and was now resting. Her voice was thick with sleepiness, and she was obviously very tired. After talking with him for a while, she hung up. Rongyu and Tianlan also deliberately sensed the location of the blood-red voice transmission talisman. It was indeed in the Ziyun sect. She wasn't lying, so he was relieved. After thinking for a while, he and Yunqi agreed to set off for the Ziyun sect tomorrow morning. To Rongyu and Tianlan, the whereabouts of Xie Huang and Ji Shunyue were unknown. He was afraid that there would be a big battle with them in the future, so he urgently needed to recover to his normal level. Fortunately, he hadn't used up too much of his telekinesis this time. As long as he cultivated in a specific place for a night, he should be able to fully recover. He also had a place that specialized in cultivating his telekinesis. Cultivating in that place was equivalent to cultivating in other places for 3 days. The only downside was that that place was isolated from the rest of the world. The voice transmission talisman couldn't receive any messages from there. Before Rongyu and Tianlan entered that place to cultivate in seclusion, he wanted to contact Ji Shunyue again. However, when he thought of her sleepy voice just now, he didn't want to disturb her anymore. Forget it. She had his contact information anyway. If she really encountered danger that she couldn't solve herself, she would definitely use the voice transmission talisman to inform him. Because he couldn't connect to the voice transmission talisman while cultivating in that secret place, Rongyu and Tianlan was also afraid that Ji Shunyue wouldn't be able to contact him while he was cultivating. Therefore, he gave all his voice transmission talismans to the outside world to Yunqi for safekeeping. He also told her that if there was any bad news from the blue voice transmission talisman, she must knock on the door to the secret place where he cultivated. Yunqi naturally agreed. When Rongyu and Tianlan was at the heavenly bestowal continent, if he needed to go into seclusion for a short period of time and Yunqi happened to be a guest at his carefree island, he would ask her to help him. In this regard, the two of them had always cooperated very happily. Therefore, when Rongyu Ishlin handed over the voice transmission talisman to Yunqi, he felt very relieved. Speaking of which, it was strange. He had clearly arranged everything properly, but after entering the mystery realm, he felt somewhat uneasy. He kept feeling that something was wrong, but he couldn't pinpoint what was wrong. He didn't have Shun Jiuli's calculating ability, so he couldn't figure out the reason for his uneasiness. After thinking about it for a moment, he concluded that the main reason for this uneasiness was probably because Ji Shunyue was not by his side, and Huang Xie and Yunqi were watching him from somewhere. He was still worried about her. Forget it. I'd better go find that girl early tomorrow. In this moment of danger, if he didn't keep her by his side to protect her, he wouldn't feel at ease. Right now, he had to cultivate to recover. He closed his eyes and forced himself to meditate and cultivate. His original plan was to meditate for 8 hours and leave as soon as the sky brightened. However, because of his uneasiness, he only meditated for 6 hours before waking up. Chapter 3070. As soon as he woke up, he panicked, as if something had happened. He couldn't sit still anymore, so he got up and opened the door of the mystic realm. When he walked out, he saw Yunxi pacing back and forth outside the door, looking as if she couldn't decide whether to call him or not. When she saw him come out, Yunxi's eyes lit up and she walked up to him. "Have you fully recovered?" Rongyue Tianlan nodded and didn't beat around the bush. "Is there anything you need from me? Has anyone been looking for me during this time?" Yunxi paused and said, "There is someone looking for you just now," but her voice was too coquettish. She didn't sound like a normal woman. In fact, she was still holding back. Ji Xinyue's voice at the time couldn't be described as coquettish. It was dripping like a coquettish hostess inviting a guest. Indeed, she didn't sound like a proper woman. Yunxi felt that with Rongyue Tianlan's taste, he shouldn't be acquainted with such a woman. However, this woman had a voice transmission talisman with Rongyue Tianlan, so they should know each other. At the time, Ji Xinyue hadn't said why she was looking for Rongyue Tianlan. She had only said that she was looking for His Highness Rongyue in a coquettish voice. Her soft, dripping, and even slightly panting voice had successfully given Yunxi goosebumps. After the other party had hung up, she was stunned for a moment. She couldn't guess who the other party was, but she was afraid of delaying Rongyue Tianlan's matter. Therefore, after thinking about it, she contacted the other party again, wanting to ask about the other party's identity. However, the other party couldn't get through no matter what. She wasn't sure if this was an accident, so when she arrived at Rongyue Tianlan's cultivation place, she wasn't sure if she should inform Rongyue Tianlan in time. After all, it was taboo to disturb him when he was cultivating. Just as she was pacing back and forth, Rongyue Tianlan came out by himself. Yunxi told him about the situation just now and took out the voice transmission talisman to show Rongyue Tianlan. Rongyue Tianlan's expression changed. "Yunxi, didn't I tell you that this voice transmission talisman is connected to Ji Xinyue? You have to inform me immediately whenever this voice transmission talisman contacts me." His voice couldn't help but carry a touch of anger. Yunxi was stunned. "Didn't you say that Miss Ji Xinyue was a straightforward heroine? But that person's words weren't just any ordinary coquettish. How could a female hero speak so softly?" Rongyue Tian glanced at her and almost wanted to rub her forehead. After all, this sound-transmitting talisman was connected to a sound-transmitting talisman. If there were no accidents, Ji Xinyue would not lend this sound-transmitting talisman to others, nor would she lose it. Now that this voice transmission talisman had suddenly sent a message in the middle of the night, regardless of whether it was her or not, it meant that there was something wrong on her side. He couldn't be bothered to explain too much to Yunxi. Instead, he immediately used the blue voice transmission talisman to contact the other side. However, there was no more movement from the other side. Something might have really happened to her. He pondered for a moment and immediately contacted Sect Master Ziyan. Sect Master Ziyan was not slow in picking up the call and immediately contacted him. Rongyue Tianlan did not beat around the bush and immediately asked about Ji Xinyue's whereabouts. Sect Master Ziyan paused for a moment. When Xinyu returned last night, it was already quite late. She should still be resting at this moment. Rongyue Shenlin said, "I'm looking for her for something urgent. Let her get up and answer my sound-transmitting talisman." Sect Master Ziyan yawned and said, "The sun is not even up yet. Your Highness Rongyue, why do you have to look for me at this time? Let's wait until she wakes up in the morning. She's not answering your sound-transmitting talisman right now. This means that she's too tired to answer. It's better not to disturb her at this time." Chapter 3071. There didn't seem to be any flaws in his words. Rongyue Tianlan paused for a moment and suddenly asked casually, "Sect leader, where are you now?" "I just woke up. What's the matter? I've been a little bored recently. How about I find you for a game of chess today?" "You're looking for Xinyu, aren't you? You're using me as a cover. Haha, you've seen through me. I'll teleport to your place to look for her. She'll probably be up when I arrive. Don't tell her. I want to give her a surprise." The person on the other side paused for a moment. "Rongyue, Can you change your temperament of acting on whatever you say? Teleporting consumes a lot of telekinesis. Just to see her, wouldn't this show more sincerity and make her feel more touched? Xinyu isn't such a person. If you use that method, she might think that you don't know what's important and won't accept you. Rongyu at Tianlan's side. You're her master, so you know her best. Forget it. I'll ride the cloud over in a while. I'll probably reach your place in 8 hours. You should prepare to receive me with delicacies. The other side seemed to be relieved. Okay. He then added, there's no need to rush. Xinyu will be staying here for a few days, so you'll be able to see her in these 2 days. The two of them chatted happily as usual and hung up after talking for a while. Yunxi, who had been listening by the side, also heaved a sigh of relief. I told you she'll be fine. She suddenly paused and looked at Rongyu at Tianlan. What's wrong with you? You don't look too good. Rongyu at Tianlan's handsome face sank the moment he hung up the sound transmission talisman. When he heard Yunxi's question, he only said briefly, something happened over there. Yunxi, I'm going out for a while. Help yourself. After he finished speaking, he was already gone. Yunxi was speechless. She didn't hear anything unusual. Why did Rongyu Tianlan run away in such a hurry? The technique he used was the shrinking earth technique. The shrinking ground technique was even more powerful than the ability to travel 1,000 miles in an instant. It could allow one to travel 1,000 miles in an instant. This place was originally 10,000 miles away from Xian's sect, but if Tianlan used this kind of technique, she would be able to reach it in less than an hour. Of course, it also consumed a lot of psychokinesis. It seemed like he was really nervous about Xinyu. He also had someone he liked. I'm the only one left. Rongyu Tianlan had only talked to Grandmaster Ziyin for a short while, but she had already found 2 suspicious points. Firstly, when Sect Master Ziyin was talking to him, Rongyu Ishinlin could faintly hear the sound of wind blowing through the forest. In other words, Sect Master Ziyin was outside at that time. But as soon as he got up, a person who woke up early should be full of energy, but Sect Master Ziyun's voice carried a trace of exhaustion, as if he had not slept the entire night. Secondly, Grandmaster Ziyun was actually an impatient person and did not care about others. Most of the time, he was idle and bored. At that time, when Rongyu Tianlan wanted to play chess with him, he did not refuse and often urged him to go quickly. He had never thought that he would exhaust his psyche power. However, this time, he had been thinking of ways to avoid letting him go early. Of course, the voice transmission that Yunxi received was even stranger. Rongyu Tianlan had clearly used that sound transmission talisman to talk to Xinyu last night. At that time, she had said that she was going to rest, so the sound transmission talisman could not have been lost. Then, what was the strange female voice that Yunxi received? Something had happened. Chapter 3072. He was afraid that something had really happened to Xinyu. He tried to contact Xinyu a few more times while he was on his way, but there was no response. Rongyu Ishinlin made up his mind and activated the blood-red sound transmission talisman. Although the blood-red sound transmission talisman had a powerful positioning function, it had a shortcoming. It was one way. Rongyu Ishinlin could only use it to contact her, but Xinyu could not use it to contact him. It also had a very special function. Once he gave this sound transmission talisman to someone, it would stay with that person forever, and no one could take it away. Even if someone took it away, it would return automatically, unless that person discovered its existence in time and threw it away. Otherwise, once this sound transmission talisman stayed with her for 10 days, even she would not be able to lose it, unless she was really dead. With this thing on Xinyu, Rongyu Ishinlin could easily locate her when he wanted to find her. This time, after Rongyu Ishinlin activated the sound transmission talisman, it was not bad. Someone finally picked it up. Who is it? The voice sounded like it was soaked in water, soft as silk, sweet as honey, as if someone was drunk and their tongue was a little big. Rongyu Ishinlin's heart sank. Although this voice was very different from Xinyu's original voice, it was indeed her voice. What happened to her? Why did she suddenly make such an ecstatic sound? Rong Yuishinlin was about to say something when another sound came from the sound transmission talisman, as if someone had fallen to the ground with a plop, and someone exclaimed in a low voice, "Ah, miss, what happened to you? Miss, can you still get up? Miss, are you all right?" Those voices were all from young men. Although their tones were different, each of them had a good voice. Some were magnetic, some were cold, and some were pleasant to listen to. "Miss, let me help you up." Miss, your face is so red, and your body is so hot. Are you having a fever? Miss, are you here to listen to music or play chess? Or, those men asked one after another. Rong Yuishinlin finally understood where Ji Shanyu was now. A brothel. No, it was a small brothel. There was a loud bang in his head, and all the blood rushed to the top of his head. He paused and almost fell from the sky. Actually, he did not need to know the cause and effect. Just by listening to those people, he knew that Ji Shanyu had been drugged. This girl actually went to look for a waiter. "Ji Shanyu, wake up. I can detoxify your poison." Rong Yuishinlin shouted angrily into the sound-transmitting talisman. But on the other side, Ji Shanyu had clearly lost her mind and was only left with her instincts. She seemed to have directly jumped into someone's arms, and her voice trembled violently. Give you money, cure the poison. Give me the antidote." This loft in Azure City had a very elegant name, Zither Loft. Because the city was not big, the business here was not very good. Although the people in the attic were all men, the majority of their customers were still men. In fact, it was prepared for those who were gay. There were very few female customers, or rather, there would only be one or two in a year. Even if one came occasionally, they would come in men's clothing, hiding their heads and tails, afraid that they would be discovered. Moreover, those women were all withered flowers that had been abandoned by their husbands. Their appearances were also ugly, and some of them were even more bold than the men. But today, the woman who broke in early in the morning was actually a great beauty. Chapter 3073. The beauty's face was flushed red, and her eyes were watery. When she threw herself into the arms of the man who helped her up, the man's bones went soft. The beauty was also rich. When she threw herself into the man's arms, she threw a heavy purse over. Some gold leaves fell out of the purse, shining dazzlingly under the light. Logically speaking, a prostitute here didn't even need a single gold leaf, but now this beauty threw the entire purse to that man. Okay. Miss, actually you don't need so much money. The man hugging her was still very professional. Besides, for such a beauty, even if it was free, they would be happy. After all, they had been in the brothel for a long time and had some knowledge. Looking at Ji Shunyu's expression, they knew that she had been drugged. They didn't know which immoral bastard had drugged such a beautiful girl, but he had benefited from it. The man half-hugged the beauty and walked towards his room. "Don't be afraid, miss. This little one will save you and make you comfortable." The other men in the building were all green with envy. To be able to go to Mount Wu with such a beautiful woman and even get money, this kind of good thing was hard to find even with a lantern. There were still people who noticed the red light flashing on the beauty's waist and couldn't help but ask, "What's that flashing on her waist?" The man half-hugging the beauty looked down and was a bit puzzled. Just as he was about to reach out to take it, a sudden change happened. A dazzling blue light suddenly flashed in front of his eyes. Before he could react, he suddenly felt the weight in his arms lighten, and a strong force directly sent him flying. Bang! He crashed into a table, and his back was in pain, making him dizzy. When he finally got up, he found that the beauty had disappeared, and only his colleagues were standing there in a daze. Where was that girl? Everyone looked at each other. No one saw how the girl disappeared. If it wasn't for the bag of gold leaves lying there, everyone would have thought that it was a dream. What's that smell? Someone whispered. This fragrance smells good. After a while, those few people stood in the hall, looking confused. What happened? Why are we standing in the hall so early in the morning? I don't know. Hey, there's a money bag here. So many golden leaves. Probably a guest accidentally dropped it here. All right, everyone go back to sleep. It's fine now. In just a short moment, They had already forgotten that the beauty had barged in to look for a man. They yawned and went back to their rooms to sleep. Hot, so hot. Ji-shun was completely under the control of the drug. Her last memory was that she had received a message from the red sound transmission talisman while she was breaking into the building. However, she was already unconscious at that time, and after she picked up the call in a daze, she couldn't remember anything. She only vaguely remembered that she desperately threw herself into a man's arms and even tore his clothes in a trance. She seemed to have been hugged by someone else, and she smelled the faint fragrance of cold plum blossoms. The fragrance made her feel irritable and aggrieved. She subconsciously pushed the other party away. Let go of me. I don't want you." That embrace held her tightly, and then her ear was suddenly bitten by someone. Chapter 3074. Ouch! She cried out softly, regaining a bit of her consciousness. Her eyes were misty, but at this moment, she was trying her best to focus. In a trance, she saw a handsome face that could bring calamity to a country, and heard the man's angry voice. "Ji-shun, you actually dared to look for a waiter." This voice was somewhat familiar. Ji-shun felt that even if this person was gritting his teeth, his voice was still better than any man's. But at the same time, her heart ached, as if someone had thrown her into sour water, soaking her heart until it wrinkled. That sour feeling rushed to her nose, and she couldn't help but push him again. "I don't want you. I don't want you. If you don't want me, who do you want?" That man hugged her even tighter, and even stuffed something in her mouth, forcing her to swallow. "When you wake up, I'll settle this with you." "Settle this? Settle what?" Ji-shun's heart ached and swelled. That inexplicable grievance was even more overwhelming. She sniffled, and like a child, tears began to fall. "You're still crying. All right, don't cry. Don't be afraid. I'll detoxify you. I won't let you suffer anymore. Be good, don't cry." At first, that voice was flustered and exasperated, but later, it became somewhat helpless and began to coax her again, and even lowered its head to kiss the tears on her cheeks. This time, Ji-shun's tears flowed even more fiercely. She cried like a tearful doll in his arms. The person hugging her was naturally Rong Tianlon. When he heard that she had run to the attic, he almost went crazy. Fortunately, his blood-red sound transmission talisman had a powerful positioning function, allowing him to easily find her location. When he hurried over and saw a greasy-haired man hugging her and walking upstairs, he exploded with anger. After taking Ji-shun back, he directly sent that man flying. If not for the fact that he had always been a kind deity and knew that this was not the fault of the people in the attic, he would have killed him. He even had the thought to flick his sleeves and tear down this broken building. Before he left, he poisoned this building, a poison that could make people forget everything that had just happened, so that the men there would no longer remember that Ji-shun had run in to look for a waiter. The woman in his arms was as hot as a small stove, clinging to him tightly. She was actually in a very sorry state. Her hair was messy, and her clothes were half wet and half dry. She looked like she had been wronged, and tears were streaming down her face. Because she was too hot, the tears evaporated when they reached her face. Looking at her crying like this, Rong Tianlon's heart, which was as hard as stone, seemed to have been ruthlessly pinched by someone. The great anger also disappeared without a trace. She couldn't help but lower her head to kiss away the tears at the corner of her eyes and coax her. "Don't cry. I'm here." Holding her in his arms, his heart, which had been hanging in the air, finally settled down. No matter what, nothing major had happened to her. She hadn't done anything irreversible. All he had to do was to detoxify her. Once she woke up, he would ask her in detail what had happened and avenge her. The most important thing was to find the person who drugged her and chop him into pieces. What he had forcefully fed her just now was the antidote to all aphrodisiacs. He believed that after the time it took to drink a cup of tea, this poison would be detoxified. Looking at her in his arms, Rong Tianlon's heart was filled with a sour feeling. He was once again sure that she was the one he wanted. whether she was Ji or not. He would never let go of her hand again. Chapter 3075. Whether the road ahead was smooth or full of thorns, he would walk hand in hand with her. She could forget about getting rid of him. After a while, Romeo Tianlan realized that something was wrong. Her little face was still hot, and her exposed skin was almost pink. She had stopped crying, but on her forehead, the tip of her nose, and her temples, there were beads of sweat everywhere. She lay on the bed, her little hands desperately tugging at her own clothes. Hot, so hot. Fortunately, the clothes on her body were specially made by the Xian sect and were abnormally strong. Her trembling little hands could not tear a seam for a long time. In a panic, she cried again, looking at Romeo Tianlan with teary eyes. Hot, I'm dying of heat. Save me. Ji Shunyue was a little cute like a child, and also a little like the little Princess Jiyu who was not in tune with the affairs of the world. Romeo Tianlan's heart felt like it was hit by something. He was originally holding the restless Ji Shunyue with one hand and checking her pulse with the other. Seeing her like this, his heart was in turmoil, and he almost hugged her and kissed her. Maybe she was really Jiyu. Deep down, she still had some similarities with her. If it did not break off the engagement and leave, would Ji Shunyue's fate be completely different? Would her personality be the same as Jiyu's? This was hard to say. The environment was very important to a person's growth. The same soul in different environments would eventually form different personalities, or even worlds apart. But no matter what she looked like, Romeo Tianlan felt that she was unique. Some people said that when the heavens created humans, they deliberately took out a man's rib to create a woman. Only when a man found his own rib could he be complete and feel what he wanted. And Ji Shunyue was Romeo Tianlan's rib. No matter what her personality was or what she looked like, she was irreplaceable. Once he found her, he did not want to let her go. Romeo Tianlan was a man. Although he cultivated the path of immortality, when he met the person he really liked, he also had the impulse of a man. He even had erotic dreams with her in the dark night. Every time he saw her, he wanted to hold her in his arms. When he was aroused, he wanted to become one with her. However, he was a perfectionist. Since he had the heart to marry her, he still wanted to save their first time until the day of their wedding, after giving her a grand wedding. It wasn't done in a hurry. But now, looking at her who was like a small stove in his arms, Romeo Tianlan felt that he couldn't wait any longer. The aphrodisiac in her body was extremely special. It was not something that could be cured with medicine. Romeo Tianlan had already forcefully fed her several kinds of antidotes to the aphrodisiac, but they were all like clay oxen sinking into the sea. They didn't have any effect at all. She was already in so much pain that she threw herself into his arms and tugged at his clothes. Her burning face was pressed against his face, and her body was squeezing desperately into his arms. Her breath seemed to be able to burn the surrounding air. Save me, save me. I'm in so much pain. Her palms were burning hot, and so was her little face. She was in great pain, and the blood in her body was boiling. She felt as if she was going to burst into flames, and his body was the only source of coolness, so she desperately squeezed into his embrace. But after all, she did not know what to do next. She fumbled around in his arms, completely at a loss. Chapter 3076. He suppressed his desire that was about to explode and kissed her patiently, caressing her. He had done all the acting he needed to do. The temperature in the room rose rapidly, and their clothes fell to the ground one by one. Finally, there was no longer any thin cloth between the two of them, and their bodies were pressed together. Ji Shunyue was in a daze, feeling as if she was being slowly grilled in a hot oil pan. It was an indescribable feeling. She wanted to urge him to hurry up, but subconsciously, she was a little afraid when he started to try to separate her legs. She subconsciously tightened and murmured a few words. No, don't. In her daze, she still thought that she was in a small brothel, and that the person who was being intimate with her was a male escort. She didn't know why, but a figure flashed through her chaotic mind. It was the figure that she hid in the deepest part of her heart, and it was also the figure that she tried to get rid of after knowing some things at such a crucial moment. She suddenly thought of him, and her tears couldn't stop flowing. That person didn't want her anymore. That person was good to her, but he only treated her as a substitute for a certain princess. Now that he knew that she wasn't that princess, he didn't even want her to be a substitute. He had a verbal engagement with another woman, and now he was sleeping with another woman. She was running desperately here, and no one could save her. But he was in another place where spring was warm and flowers were blooming, making love with another woman, too tired to get out of bed, and she could only find a male escort that she didn't know to give her first time. Grievance, bitterness, sadness, hopelessness, fear, all kinds of negative emotions were stirring in her chest, and under the influence of the drug, she couldn't control these emotions at all. She wanted to cry when she felt wronged, and her tears almost formed a river. It wasn't unusual for a girl to cry on her wedding night, but most of the time, it was when they were really doing it, and they were too delicate, so they cried in pain. However, Rongyue Tianlan had never heard of her crying like this before the official start of the competition. At this moment, he felt like a rapist. It was impossible to stop at this time. Firstly, he had to use this method to cure her poison, and secondly, he was like an arrow on the bow. If he didn't release it, he would have problems holding it in. She was clearly the one who had been poisoned, but he felt that he had been poisoned as well. It was her poison, and there was no cure for it. Seeing her cry like this, Rongyue Tianlan's burning passion cooled down a little. He leaned over her body and wiped away the tears on her face with his fingers. He said in a hoarse voice, "Shenyu, don't be afraid. I'll be gentler. Don't cry." He thought that she was frightened. "Ji Shenyu sobbed. You? How do you know my name? You? What's your name?" In her daze, she still felt that she should know the name of the man who had taken her virginity, Rongyue. He froze. A waiter. She actually thought that he was a prostitute. Those prostitutes weren't even fit to carry his shoes. No, why should he, a dignified, exalted immortal, compare himself to those prostitutes? That wasn't right either. Such an intimate thing could only be done between the two of them, but she actually thought that she was doing it with a male escort. No wonder she was crying like that. She had been wronged? Grievance. If she thought that the person being intimate with her was a male escort, she should have kicked him away. Instead of crying, what was the use of crying? If it was really a male escort doing it with her, he wouldn't stop even if she cried bloody tears. Chapter 3077. Rongyue Tianlan was enraged. His handsome face turned green and white. After a while, he gritted his teeth and pinched her chin. "Young man, come, open your eyes and see who I am." He used a lot of strength, pinching her chin so hard that it hurt. The pain finally pulled her out of her daze. She blinked and tried to focus, finally seeing the man on top of her. That person's face was as if the landscape of the Fanine continent had been carefully painted by the hand of God. He was so handsome that it was soul-stirring. Rongyue Tianlan. He was Rongyue Tianlan. Her eyes suddenly widened, and her red and swollen mouth opened slightly. She said a few words in a hoarse voice. "Rongyue, exalted deity, very good." She finally recognized him. Rongyue Tianlan breathed a sigh of relief and hugged her tightly again. He nibbled on her earlobe. "Don't be so stiff. Shenyu, call me Tianlan, her husband." It was already bright outside. The light blue sky shone on the bed through the veil and jumped on her pale pink skin. There was sweat on her skin, and beads of sweat were sparkling like pearls. At this moment, the two skin was touching each other. The smooth, jade-like touch, the pink and translucent appearance, coupled with her exquisite body lines, was enough to make any normal man's blood boil. Rongyue Tianlan's eyes seemed to have flames dancing in them. His breathing was rapid and heavy. He barely suppressed the burning desire and rubbed his body against each other, causing the temperature in the tent to rise even higher. He was waiting for her to call out his name, to call him husband. He thought that at this time, Even if Ji Shun Yu didn't call him husband, she would still call his name and ask him to continue. However, he didn't expect Ji Shun Yu under him to suddenly struggle vigorously. Her face was red, and she pushed and shoved him. No, I don't want you. Rong Yue Tianlan. I don't want you, Rong Yue Tianlan. He felt like he was hit by a stick. There was a bang in his head. She would rather have a young man than him. Why? In her heart, he was less than a young man. No. In their previous interactions, she had clearly been moved by him. Perhaps it wasn't as passionate as he was, but she was really moved. After all, Rong Yuetian was a Casanova. He could still feel this, since she had already fallen in love with him. Even if he wasn't the number one choice in her heart, his status couldn't possibly be lower than that of an escort, right? There must be a misunderstanding. It was a big misunderstanding. Why don't you want me? Shouldn't you come? Tell me, why don't you want me? Rong Yuetian seemed to be coaxing her, but her voice was extremely strong. Tears flowed out of the corners of Ji Shun Yu's eyes again. After being controlled by the drug, she was extremely weak and had no self-control at all. Not only could she not control her tears, she could not control her mouth to complain. You used me as a substitute. I don't want to be a substitute. I don't want to share a husband with others. I don't want to steal someone else's man. Her mind was muddled, and she couldn't control herself at all. She blurted out the most grievous thing in the depths of her heart. At the end of her speech, her tears fell down again. In the past, you didn't want me. Now, the one you want isn't me. I don't want you to force yourself to cure the poison. I also don't want you to force yourself. What she said was actually a little incoherent. Fortunately, Rong Yuetian was extremely intelligent, so he still understood the general idea. Chapter 3078. Amidst his anger and amusement, his heart ached and swelled. He hugged her in his arms and said word by word, Shun Yu, it was my fault for missing you in the past, but now I only have you and only want you. There's no one else, and you won't share a husband with anyone else. Also, I didn't force you to detoxify the poison. In fact, he was very willing. If it was someone else, he would have broken down. No, you, in Yunxi, you're already very tired, so tired that you didn't pick up my voice transmission talisman. Yunxi picked it up. I didn't want to disturb you, but I had no choice. Rong Yuetianlan was speechless. This was a great injustice. He vaguely understood where the problem was. Who on earth was the one who whispered such words into her ear? There was clearly nothing going on. However, seeing her cry like this, did that mean that she was actually jealous? When this girl was awake, her little mouth was like a clam shell, and she always had a strong look on her face. She locked all her thoughts in her heart and wouldn't say anything even if he forced her. Now, she was voicing out her dissatisfaction, doubts, and grievances. He rubbed his eyebrows. Shinyu, Yunxi is my friend, just a friend. I don't have any romantic feelings for her, so naturally, nothing will happen. I was indeed tired last night, but because I was in a hurry, I was meditating last night, and there was no voice transmission talisman in that place, so I gave it to Yunxi and asked her to pick it up. He half leaned on her body and suppressed his lust as he explained to her. No matter how she misunderstood him, as long as she could tell him, he would know what the problem was and be able to explain it to her. At this moment, Rong Yuetianlan was even a little grateful for the effects of this aphrodisiac. Otherwise, this girl would have such a big misunderstanding about him. With her personality, she would have silently distanced herself from him and wouldn't have cried and scolded him, causing him to be misunderstood. He didn't know what exactly she misunderstood after explaining. He held his breath and looked at her. Would she believe him? She should believe him, right? Because she had just cried. Ji Xinyu's big eyes were misty. She blinked and a teardrop came out. She blinked again and another teardrop came out. Just as Rong Yuetianlan was waiting anxiously, she stretched out her trembling arms and wrapped them around his neck, pressing him towards her. I feel so uncomfortable. Save me. Rong Yuetian was speechless. Was she in a daze or sober state? Rong Yuetianlan was slightly panting. He suppressed the lust that was about to explode and forcefully turned her little face over. Looking at her teary eyes, he asked, "Shunyu, who am I?" Ji Shunyu struggled under his body. Her eyes could no longer focus. Only instinct remained, the instinct to become one with the person in front of her. Her little face was flushed red, and her breath was hot. Her little mouth muttered a few more words. You save me. I'll give you money, a lot of money. Rong Yui Shinlin, very good. He had become a gigolo again. You want to buy it with money? Did she know that he had kept you Tianlan's chastity until now? Did she know that his chastity was also priceless? Motherfucker, even if money couldn't buy him, it couldn't be compared to 10,000 cities. He wouldn't trade the entire Sanskrit continent for it. He gritted his teeth and smiled. You have money? How much are you giving me? Golden leaves, so many golden leaves. Ji Shunyu groped her body in a daze. Chapter 3079. Of course, Ji Shunyu did not touch anything and was still puzzled. Where are my gold leaves? Rongyu Fanlan looked coldly at her, touching herself, and felt very uncomfortable. He gritted his teeth and laughed again. You can't buy me no matter how many gold leaves you have. Change it. Ji Shunyu's face was about to spit fire. She felt that this young man was very expensive. However, she did feel an indescribable sense of comfort from him. Her hands trembled as she rummaged through her storage space again. Her little hand was pressed down by him, and she widened her eyes in confusion. His palms were burning hot, and his eyes were as deep as a lake. It was as if he wanted to swallow her whole. He lowered his head and licked her ear, causing her to tremble as if she was having a cold. Then he whispered in her ear, "But for you, I can give it to you for free." Ji Shunyu's reaction was slower than half a beat. She looked at him with her mouth slightly open, but he did not want to talk nonsense with her and kissed her deeply. The passionate kiss almost ignited each other, and he did not hold back anymore. His lips, hands lingered on her body, igniting her everywhere. He was very skilled. Even if she was normal, she would not be able to resist his teasing, let alone when she was under the influence of the aphrodisiac. She gasped for breath. At this time, she could only give in to desire. She straightened her body impatiently and said with a trembling voice, "Hurry, hurry up." She was a virgin after all, and he was not an ordinary person. Although he had already done all the steps, she was still in pain and cried out softly. But with his deep kiss, her cries were as weak as a whisper. Only her body was trembling. Rongyu Tianlan was also sweating. He was not in pain, he was enduring it. She treated him as a young man. Although he gritted his teeth in hatred, he could not bear to hurt her at this time. Seeing her trembling violently, he stopped and waited for her to get used to it. "Does it hurt?" she said with tears in her eyes. "It hurts. Get out." She moved her body impatiently. He imprisoned her and kissed her, letting her relax bit by bit until she got used to it. After a hearty, he led her to the top again and again. Rongyu Tianlan looked gentle, elegant, and harmless. He did not seem to care about anything. However, at a time like this, he was still extremely domineering. It could be said that he held the absolute initiative. Sometimes it was fast, sometimes it was slow. Sometimes it was like a storm, causing her to be distracted. Sometimes it was like the spring breeze brushing against a willow, causing her to soften into a ball. After all, she was poisoned, so she was extremely sensitive to everything. Furthermore, he was deliberately pleasing her, so it was easy for her to bloom. And as it bloomed again and again, the poison in Ji Shunyu's body was slowly dispelled, and her muddled mind finally regained its clarity. The room was filled with the scent of pleasure. Mixed with the fragrance of the incense burning in the copper cauldron, it formed a strange smell that filled the room. After the last round of pleasure, both of them were drenched in sweat. At this moment, Ji Shunyu's body was extremely sore and weak. She pushed Rongyu Tianlan away, her fingertips moving slightly as she tried to form a seal, wanting to use the cleansing incantation on herself. But after a few rounds of passion, she was extremely weak, and her hand seals were all jumbled up, unable to achieve the desired effect. Ji Shunyu was still not satisfied and continued to cast the spell. Rongyu Tunlan watched quietly for a moment, and his heart trembled as he held her wrist. "Let me do it." Ji Shunyu thought that he would also use a cleansing incantation, but she did not expect him to use a normal method. Chapter 3080. He took out a snow-white handkerchief from somewhere and wiped her gently. As the soft handkerchief slid across her skin, Ji Shinhua blushed and raised her hand to stop him. "I'll do it myself." Rongyu Tianlan held the hand that she wanted to stop, while the other hand continued to wipe her. A man who was satisfied always had a good temper, so at this moment, the smile in Rongyu Tianlan's eyes was like a spring breeze brushing past. "Shinyu, I like to personally serve you." Ji Shinhua couldn't stop him. She closed her eyes and said in a hoarse voice, "Thank you." Rongyu Tianlan's fingers froze, and he looked down at her. "Thank me?" He seemed to have thought of something, and his beautiful eyes narrowed. "Thank me for using this method to detoxify you? Thank me for sacrificing myself?" Or, his voice was a little hoarse after pleasure, like a feather tickling one's senses. He leaned closer to her and whispered the last sentence in her ear. This sentence was a little poisonous and even frivolous. Or, "Thank me for my skills, which are much better than those boys." "You." Ji Shinyue's little face was flushed red before another layer of red surged up. She gritted her teeth and glared at him. She didn't know what to feel. When she was awake and saw that he was the one who had done it with her, she couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. But at the same time, she thought of the voice transmission talisman. Then, she thought about how he had probably just climbed out of Yunqi's bed. She felt an indescribable sense of suffocation. If she had been awake, she might not have let him touch her. She would rather give her first time to a boy than let him take responsibility for it and be entangled between him and Yunqi, but she had woken up too late. What was done could not be undone. They had already had a few rounds of pleasure. The feelings in her heart were indescribable. Her head was buzzing. She took a deep breath and said hoarsely, "Rongyu Tianlan, what do you plan to do?" Rongyu Tianlan already knew what she was feeling uncomfortable about, but he didn't want to expose her mischievously. "Who asked her to find a boy?" He touched his nose and pretended to be confused. "What do you mean?" His eyes rippled like water. You want me to take responsibility, don't you?" "Don't worry, I will take responsibility. Shinyu, you are now mine. I will send someone to Nantian Palace to propose marriage." She knew it. He would take responsibility for this. But she didn't want this kind of responsibility. Ji Shinyu took another breath. "Rongyu Tianlan, this matter was an accident. I don't need you to take responsibility. You don't need to force yourself to marry me because of this. What if I say that I won't force you?" Rongyu Tian looked at her. Ji Shinyu gritted her teeth. "If you don't force me, then I will. I don't want to marry you." She suddenly paused and grabbed his hand. "What are you doing?" There was a small medicine bottle in Rongyu Ishinlan's hand, and there was a green liquid in the medicine bottle. He had just touched a little of that liquid and was about to rub it on a certain part of her body. Her small palm was wet with sweat. Rongyu Tian flipped his wrist and freed his hand from her small hand. He had an innocent look on his face as he said, "I'm applying medicine for you. Actually, I was already careful enough, but you were still injured. This medicine is extraordinarily good at healing wounds. Applying it on you will make you feel very comfortable." You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.